Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Laura, and this is your flash briefing for the week of November 11th. Want to get more involved in the community and make a difference? The Lee Summit Housing Authority Board of Commissioners is currently taking applications for new members. The Housing Authority is a municipal corporation funded under Missouri law that administers federal funding to affordable housing programs in Lee Summit. Citizens who wish to serve may apply by completing an application on the city's website at cityofls.net. We are needing your input. Every 2 years, the police department conducts a brief survey to better understand resident needs. Survey feedback is valued and used to shape the community's safety and well-being. Find a link to the survey at lspolice.net. Have you ever wondered how your local government works? How the city budget is developed? Where the city water comes from? The Citizens Leadership Academy will help answer those questions and more. Tour facilities and learn about the inner workings of city government from city leaders and elected officials. Participants will attend 7 sessions beginning in January. Applications are accepted through December 13th and space is limited. Find the application on the city's website. The festive season can be particularly tough for those struggling with a substance use disorder. The Lee Summit Police Department has partnered with behavioral health providers to provide a path to recovery for those seeking treatment. Participation in the Safe Passage program is voluntary. Find more information on the city's website. Heads up, Jackson County taxpayers. Lee Summit City Hall is currently unable to process tax payments, print receipts, or create waivers. Taxpayers are advised to visit a Jackson County location or pay online at jacksongov.org. And city facilities are closed today, Monday, November 11th for Veterans Day. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
So many of our past successes were made possible by understanding the multitude of perspectives in our community. When we take the time to see the world through someone else's eyes, we enrich our own understanding and foster an environment where everyone can thrive. When I see the renovations we've made to our parks, I see an investment, not just in essential infrastructure, but in people that builds community and directly impacts the physical and social well-being of our residents.
I see equity, inclusive playgrounds where people from all walks of life can come together.
I see a place to play.
When I see the development we have helped facilitate in our community, I see the results of solution-oriented decision-making, with job opportunities, easier access to goods and services, housing options, improved infrastructure, and increased economic growth.
I see projects created through collaboration between the city and developers that will provide value, benefit, and opportunity to the Lee Summit community.
I see growth in community and a way to connect more people to their food.
When I see the major road improvements underway, I see well-connected and safe transportation that enhances mobility and increases access to local businesses, spurring economic growth, safe deliveries to homes, and happy trips to ball games and activities.
I see improved roadways, added sidewalks, and shared-use paths for pedestrians and cyclists, safe transportation and recreation for all.
I see better connectivity, increased lanes, less congestion, and just make it easier to get around.
When I see the investments we've made in public safety, I see enhanced emergency preparedness and first responders who are ready on a moment's notice to protect the community and deliver immediate life-saving care.
I see the city value its fire department employees come to fruition in recruitment, retention, and a positive culture.
I see a community that can respond to emergencies quickly. My whole family lives in Lee Summit, so there's a lot of peace of mind there.
What we do is not just about making decisions and funding budgets. It's about enriching the quality of life for all of our residents. It's about realizing that a building is not just steel and concrete, a park is not just metal and ropes, a road is not just asphalt, and a city is not just land. It's about the experiences we provide to all people of all generations and backgrounds.
That's the one, right? Yep. Good.
This month's Council Member Spotlight is all about Mayor Bill Baird. Check it out.
I have always volunteered in the community and I was always really involved, but then I ran for school board. Whenever I got done with my term, I just felt like I had more to give. It's always been my goal from day one is to get everyone in the community connected and working together, and I always called it a spirit of community. Well, Mayor's 24/7 and I have a job. I've had to work really hard at compartmentalizing, is what I call it. So during this time, I'm gonna do work. During this time, I'm gonna be mayor, even though I can get a call at any moment about mayor stuff. And so I've had to even work that much harder at setting aside time for myself or for family. So I like to exercise, I like to work out. Hillary's my wife. She actually goes to work out with me as well. And we do like to go downtown to the shops. We make sure we maximize our time together. I mean, I've got 2 kids as well, and we spend a lot of time with them, or whatever time they will give us these days. And I have a dog. I think most people kind of know me know I have to have a dog. We have so much development going on, and we're growing fairly quickly, so we have a lot of infrastructure needs, and sometimes we have gaps in infrastructure, and we've always managed to get by, but with this kind of growth, we're really having to be creative and look at our options and just have a good plan for water, sewer, roads, and more. If we want to grow the most healthy way, we need a diverse economy. We do have a lot of retail that's opened up here, and there's been new construction for retail. We really need to focus in the future on bringing some, well-paying jobs here, good, strong employers that want to be located in this this incredible community of now 101,000 people. A lot of our workforce does commute to work still, so they leave Lee Summit to go to work, and it'd be nice if we could keep some of those citizens right here in our community. The times I feel most proud are actually when I'm in the community and I see the community come together.
We have Buddy in the house. Mr. Mayor!
The tree lighting is always very fun. I always feel very proud. It's just a great warm feeling. The same thing goes for when the council will do something and we come together and make a good decision together. There's been a few of those that you go home feeling like a winner. And one of them was when we put together the downtown farmers market, when we bought the land, and it became real, you know, all that hard work. But also the Diversity and Inclusion Commission, that was months and months of discussions and conversations that were really hard to have, and we went ahead and moved forward and as a council all together, and I was very, very proud of that. And there are a few things that the citizens have done that have really helped us tremendously. First, in the middle of a pandemic, they passed a use tax, which is a way for us to collect sales tax whenever someone purchases online. That helps shore up our revenues so that we can continue providing as high quality services that our city provides. And it helps us take care of our employees, it helps us with our public safety and more. So I can't be more thankful to the citizens for that. Lee Summit has the opportunity to have a major impact on the economy in the Kansas City area. We already, as an economy, are rolling along with such a high median income. We have an amazing workforce here that are paying taxes, they're paying property taxes, they're paying sales taxes, they're keeping our economy rolling, and we really are getting the attention of all our neighbors. And I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see the opportunity for us to really get everybody's attention when businesses start moving here, bigger businesses and more so. You should try to find a way to give back to the community, whether it's at the city level, you know, citizen committees, or just participating in some of our community conversations whenever we have those opportunities. It's worth coming out of your shell or taking, you know, that leap of faith and just showing up and saying, what can I do or how can I help? The more that we do this together, the more wonderful the community is.
We will call to order the Lease Summit Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, November 14th, 2024. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mark Kitchens. Sherry Frazier.
Present.
Jake Lovelace.
Present.
Dana Arth.
Present.
Donnie Funk.
Present.
Terry Trafton.
Present.
Tanya Jonaford. Chip Tazinski.
Present.
Randy Benbrook.
Present.
Thank you. I know no changes to the agenda. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as published?
Mr. Chair, I motion that we approve the agenda as published.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I get a vote on approval of the agenda, please?
Sherry Frazier.
Yes.
Jake Lovelace.
Yes.
Dana Arth.
Yes.
Donnie Funk.
Yes.
Terry Trafton.
Yes.
Tanya Jonaford. Chip Tazinski.
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Thank you, and the agenda has been approved. We are at our spot for public comments. This is for anything for the Planning Commission outside any of the items on our agenda tonight. I see none, so we move on to the approval of our consent agenda. The consent agenda contains two items. Items A, application PL 2024-273, sign application, the Church of Christ of Lee Summit, monument sign 201 Northwest Chipman Road, Church of Christ of Lee Summit applicant. And item B, approval of the October 24th, 2024 Planning Commission action letter. Can I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Could I get a vote on approval of the consent agenda?
Sherry Frazier.
Yes.
Jake Lovelace.
Yes.
Dana Arth.
Yes.
Donnie Funk.
Yes.
Terry Trafton.
Yes.
Chip Tazinski.
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Thank you. The consent agenda has been approved. Moving right along to our first public hearing, we will open up application application 20242-233, vacation of row 101 Southwest Market Street, Wineteer construction applicant. Anyone wishing to provide testimony or speak on behalf of this application, please stand and be sworn in at this time. Thank you. The applicant has a presentation for us. If you give us your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Nick McIntyre, president of Wineteer Construction. Address of Wineteer Construction is 8414 East 73rd Terrace, Kansas City, Missouri, 64133.
Thank you.
So we are here this evening asking for the vacation of the right-of-way that is north of the building or south of First Street. We have some steps that are going outside of the basement currently that we are unable to repair because the building property line is actually the edge of the building. We're going to refer to staff for documents or display documents. There should be in those display documents a aerial view with a red halo around it of the area that we want to gain. It's basically just the lawn that we're mowing, currently maintaining. Currently, it seems like it's part of the property, but it's actually the right-of-way. So in order for us to repair those steps, we're just asking for that vacation. We're not asking for a vacation of easements. We understand there's easements that run through there. We're not asking to make gigantic improvements to it. We are also applying for permits to go around the front of the building and repair different portions of the building that are in disarray on the front and all the other sides of the building.
Thank you.
Good evening, Claire Byers, Senior Planner. I'd like to enter into the record Exhibit A, list of Exhibits 1 through 12.
Exhibits 1 through 12 noted and entered into the record.
Purpose of the vacation request is to revert the subject portion of excess right-of-way back to the abutting private property so that Grace Community Church can renovate the existing structures located within the area. The subject portion effectively constitutes the side entrance and yard, and the portion of right-of-way that's requested to be vacated does not include any portion of the existing street. The subject right-of-way is located along Southwest 1st Street, perpendicular to Northwest Market. The surrounding area is characterized by commercial as well as both single-family and two-family residential uses. To the east of Southwest 1st Street is a parking lot that serves the subject property. The right-of-way was established in 1865, but only 25 feet of the platted 60 were used to construct the first street. Private utility infrastructures are located within the right-of-way to be vacated. However, the utility companies have approved this vacation with the condition of approval retaining a 10-foot utility easement. The Ignite Comprehensive Plan identifies the subject area as within the Downtown Activity Center. The proposed vacation of right-of-way does not compromise the ability to implement or achieve any policies, goals, or objectives outlined in the comprehensive plan. Subject right-of-way was dedicated but not utilized in the construction of the street, does not account for any future area road plans, and serves no current or future public purpose. The applicant hosted a neighborhood meeting on October 21st, 2024, and no members of the public attended. No comments have been received by staff. The application follows the Ignite Comprehensive Plan and the requirements of the UDO. Staff recommends approval of the vacation with the following conditions outlined here and in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from the public on this application? I see none. We will move to the commission for any questions. Commissioner Benbrook, anything?
No questions. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Tazinski?
No questions.
Commissioner Trafton?
Thank you for that great overview of the right-of-way. My question is, do you know, is there a right-of-way across First Street on the north side of First Street as well that kind of mirrors this?
There is, yes.
Because it looks like in one of your photos there was a setback there, so there's another 10-foot right-of-way over there that's still being occupied?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for that. And so you said this right-of-way has been there for over almost 150 years? And
Yeah, it was actually platted as the original map of the town of Strother.
Yeah. I'm curious, I mean, I know we don't know this, but I don't know if the owner would know. Like, there was never, when you were building back many years ago, like, it just makes sense that at that point in time that would have happened. But you don't know, do you, sir? Yeah.
And this is a photo of that original plat with the stars.
I believe the church building, the church that owns it right now occupied it in 2013, so we have no idea what happened to that building before 2013.
How old, do you know how old the building is? Okay.
And staff could not locate any historic building permits for this site.
I can tell you the structure has old growth lumber and beams in it, so it's very old.
Okay.
It's probably in the 40s.
Very good.
50s.
Okay, well, thank you for that, sir. Thank you, I appreciate it. That's all my questions, Chair.
Commissioner Arth?
No questions.
Commissioner Lovelace? Commissioner Frazier?
No questions. Thank you.
No other questions. I will close the public hearing and open up for discussion or a motion. Do we have any discussion on this? None? Commissioner Trafton?
Chair, I would like to recommend approval of application 2024-233, vacation of right-of-way, 101 Southwest Market Street, Wineteer Construction applicant.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Could I get a vote, please?
Sherry Frazier,
Yes.
Jake Lovelace,
Yes.
Dana Arth,
Yes.
Donnie Funk,
Yes.
Terry Trafton,
Yes.
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Thank you. And this application has been recommended for approval. We will move on to our next public hearing and open up application PL 2024-217, rezoning from R1 to 1 and RP3, and preliminary development plan, the Townhomes of Chapel Ridge, 4060 Northeast Ralph Powell Road, Engineering Solutions Applicant LLC. Anyone wishing to provide testimony or speak on behalf of this application, please stand and be sworn in at this time. Thank you. Matt, I think you've ran through this one before. If you want to do a high-level overview, we won't make you start from scratch. And
Sure. Well, let me start off. I apologize for the last meeting and how that went. We have worked very hard with this group to find a solution that I think even they would agree is a good solution that meets in the middle. I did not want to miss presenting that at that meeting, but I did have something to get to, and I could have transitioned much, much better to my associate as we went in. So I do apologize in having to have this meeting delayed and get to this point. But yeah, the short answer is in 2019 we came through with a plan because that development that started in the early 2000s wasn't really going anywhere. The sales weren't there, the development wasn't there, and we came through with the idea to start developing some of the townhomes. And that took off and it went well. And in 2019 we had shown the westerly side of that site as being single family, thinking that it made sense to build lots that were in similar style to what is the estates or the hill. As we've gotten through the process, we've identified that even in those lots, we've had 3 still that are undeveloped and have been undesirable from the sense of trying to get it going in the process. So as we started working through the process, we thought through what could be. We came forward with a plan originally to the neighbors that was more townhomes all the way through, and that met with much resistance. And so we continued to work with them, and as I stated last time, I applaud them because this is really their idea to come back with a single family product kind of on that side, gaining some green space, gaining some landscaping, and providing a good transition from what is the estate style homes to a 2,300 square foot style home to get to the townhomes that are in that 1,200 and 1,400 square foot. What they're gaining and what we believe is a benefit to the overall community is it's a product that we believe will sell. It's a product that is now maintenance provided. It is a product that's going to gain green space between separating the 2 units. We're adding landscaping. We've agreed in 2021, I think it was, we came through and we modernized kind of the overall development by removing tile roofs, adding some architectural elements. They requested that we put tile roofs back on these single families. We've agreed to do that. Additionally, at the entry to the development, there's a townhome that's getting built on lot 9 right now. We're going to go ahead and put tile roof on that at their request to try to tie this in together so that the developers worked hard to try to come up with a plan that I think meets their desire and kind of gets a good transition to keep the development going. And I think they've even stated that a number of the residents are good with the plan. It then goes to the problem that they've had is with the developer and some of his maintenance characteristics, his ability to follow through and his ability to do what he should. And so as I stated to them at the neighborhood meeting, over the number of years that we've worked with this developer, we've started stepping in and kind of becoming that mediator. And we offer that to them the same way. And so the mowing concerns and things that they had wasn't on this property, it was over on the Villas project. And we've got that under construction now, and I think that's taken care of. This site, I think more of it was just related to the overall maintenance, the trash and the debris. And I said the same thing, give me a call and we'll take care of closing that gap between what they have. And as I've stated, the benefit of getting this development going and underway is it'll move unconstructed area, undeveloped area into constructed and on the way to a maintenance provided area. So I think that answers most of those questions that I heard in the meetings and those pieces of it. Certainly here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Matt. Hector. Hector, I don't want you to have to go through the whole thing again. If you want to do this is what the plan was, this is the new plan, kind of that works for you, unless there's something you need to add in there.
No, Hector Soto Jr., Senior Planner. So I guess just to reiterate where we sit well, I guess I won't reiterate. So what I'll say is, since the previous meeting, there's been no new plan, no new information. There was nothing requested at that time by the Planning Commission for staff to address. So our recommendation still continues to be that which was original, which are the 3 conditions of approval in front of you, including some language to hopefully give some relief to the adjacent property owners about the specificity about the 2 northern units that would be zoned RP3, in that only a single-family or 2-family residential development could go on those 2 northern pieces. I know part of the concern was plan. These 2 northern, the northernmost lots here are shown, and the conditions in there that they be developed either with single-family or 2-family to act as that transitional buffer between the estate or larger single-family homes to the west, transitioning over to the east with either single-family, 2-family, and then at that point, beyond that, it could be the 4-family that's allowed under the existing plan. So with that, I'll yield to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Hector. I know I wasn't here at the previous meeting. I know we had a lot of public input, and we will move to that portion now. If there's anyone from the public that wants to speak on behalf of this application, I've seen a few of you swore in. If your questions didn't get answered at that point in time. Seeing none, I will move to the commission for questions. Commissioner Frazier.
I just wanted to make sure. So the transition is single family or twins. Is that before it transitions into the fourplex? I'm sorry. Yep, for
Correct.
these 2 here. For these 2 here.
Yeah, for these 2 here, yes.
So, and forgive me, so under, I don't want to say under no circumstances, could there be a change in somehow or another those move into a fourplex? Is it stated that it absolutely has to be either single family or twins or duplex?
If this plan is approved as written with the condition in there, then yes, it has to be one of those 2, single family or 2-family. The only way that could change is if a new application is made, it comes through the public hearing process, and the neighbors would have the ability to have a say at that point.
Okay, thank you. That's what I need.
Thank you. Commissioner Lovelace.
No questions.
Commissioner Arth.
I just have a question for Matt. So it sounds like you listened to the questions in the last public hearing, and then have you been in contact with the residents? And I saw no one wanted to speak on behalf of the application, so it looks like everybody is on the same page and happy with your responses.
We have not spoken to the neighbors and I since the last meeting, but I think what I heard is consistent with what I heard at the HOA meeting and at the neighborhood meeting, and more that the plan was generally okay. It was more of the irritation with the developer. And I think, yes, we're okay and we're on the same page of it. And then one thing I want to put on record, just so they're hearing it in the same way we've always said, technically we are zoned on that easterly side. That's not part of this application for fourplexes, but 3s is what we will be building. We promised and noted that we won't build anything more than 3plexes on that easterly side, and I don't want that being misunderstood. It is zoned for 4plexes, but 3plexes is what we'll have on the east side, just so we were hearing it and stating it so they can hear it too.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all.
Commissioner Trafton.
Thank you, Chair. So just to be clear, and it looks like in the application and in the staff report that lots 22 through 40 are remaining RP1. Is that correct?
It's these.
The blue ones right
there?
there?
Yeah, these blue guys. So what they are currently zoned R1. And so what we did is we rezoned them, or asking to rezone them to RP1, which allowed us to make the lots a little narrower. in order to gain the green space back in here in order to create a buffer and landscaping back in that area.
So
But
we're
this is
taking
your
them
RP1.
to RP1
Yes, for this
to
section.
allow for the smaller lot size and then the buffer zone, which it does sound like from the last testimony, the resident that lives directly behind there did not realize there was that buffer, I think, and now understands there'll be a 30-foot buffer with trees and burns and landscaping. And so he seemed, to my impression was he seemed okay with knowing that, not being fully happy that these size of these homes were, or the lot sizes were going to be smaller. When I was looking at the size of the home, though, it looked like the square footage was not that far off. Like, we're still talking about 2,300 square foot homes. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. The villa that we kind of got as our prototype is 2333 with a 2-car garage, expandable to a 3-car garage. The idea being is the homes on the westerly side or the state side were 2,700 square foot. The stuff on the east side was, you know, the townhome. So we thought something in the middle at 2333 started to make sense on that idea. So yeah, that's the idea of
I mean,
size.
we're not talking a huge difference with what it looks like. 300 square feet is not a lot of space. So I just wanted to confirm, though, that we're not shrinking them down
Correct.
considerably. They're still pretty nice-sized homes, so, okay. I think, and then it sounds like you have become the intermediate, so you work with a developer?
We do a lot of work with the developer and find that it's best in these situations that we can have conversations with both parties much easier. And as we've talked to them, if they'll make contact with us, it'll make it easier in the process of that side of it.
Who is the developer?
Kevin Higdon.
Kevin who?
Higdon.
Higdon?
Yep.
So he could not be here tonight?
He had another meeting tonight, so he could not.
So he, and so it sounds like there's been lots of kind of back and forth with him in the past. And so you feel like you've been able to smooth some of that over between them?
I believe we've started the discussions, and I believe we can get there. So I think that's the point of we'll take it and run from there.
Okay. Let's see. I think those were my questions. I think you helped clarify them. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tuzinski.
No additional questions, thank you.
Commissioner Bembrook.
No questions, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Matt, I'm gonna just make sure I hit a couple of things that came back up. You covered the tile roofs, I don't wanna put you on the spot for this, since the developer couldn't be here. He should be on the spot for this. With this application and in the public hearing, and for the record, the developer is going to focus on cleaning up the site. I know there were some issues with the pond area and the moss and the growth and that kind of thing, and he's going to do that for the residents.
The pond is not, that's HOA land,
Okay.
so he doesn't own that part. But he is responsible for the villa section and the townhome section, and that we can say that we will take care of.
Okay, and that HOA brings up a good point. There was another question that was brought to, through a call, that the covenants, I guess you would say, for the HOA says the minimum square footage is 2,700 square feet.
For the estates.
For the estates, and I wanted to make sure that was on the record. That is not for this development, and also that the public understands that's not a city ordinance, that is an HOA ordinance.
Correct. The current CCNRs are only for the platted lots of the estates.
Okay. And I think you covered the 30-foot buffer area is still in play. That was in the 2019 rezoning process, correct? That's the green space that showed on there, the 30.
On the north end?
Yes.
Yes, we've confirmed that we'll have that. We've saved all those trees.
Okay, perfect. Anything else from the commission, staff? Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Trafton.
Sorry, I missed this, but I'm recalling some of the conversation from the neighbors, and they were concerned that some of the current estate homes are not meeting that requirement of the 2,700 square feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. There are a couple houses that are in there that are about 180 square feet short of what the CCNRs currently show.
So like 25
They're 25.
something,
Yep.
yeah. So I guess the concern was on those two estate lots that you have remaining, the 20A and the 21A. There was a concern that you weren't going to meet the HOA's minimum standard of 2,700 because you've already made exception to that. And so I guess
We will make sure that those two lots that remain, actually, there are three lots that remain. The third one, I'm not sure what we're going to do with it. It's a tough platted lot, but the two that sit directly to the west that are highlighted here is 20A and 21A will meet the CCNRs.
okay. And you're not Kevin is the builder, right? Kevin Higdon,
Right.
is that what you said?
Yep.
He's actually building the homes and managing the project and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
So you're just helping him get it all straight,
We are.
so the walls are straight and all that kind of good stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else from the commission. I will close the public hearing and we will open up for discussion or a motion. Commissioner Bimbrook, any discussion?
Out from me, Chair, thank you.
Commissioner Tuzinski.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, first off, thanks, Mr. Schlicht, for coming in and talking about this and answering some of the concerns of the residents there. I really would like to see the developer here. I think that's shared by a few people up here. This is the second opportunity for him to be here, and he couldn't make the last one, could make this one. I think it's important, I don't care if it's just one property owner that has an issue, it's important to get someone to have their voice heard and get a response. And I think that's why I was so upset last time that there was no one here with true knowledge of the project to even have that discussion. And I think, moving forward, I would hope that the developer can show up and have that conversation. But I appreciate you making assurances to the people that these are going to get done and that they're going to take care of their property. And as we move forward, hopefully they'll continue through the construction process to keep their subdivision clean and nice. So thank you very much. That's all I
Thank you. Commissioner Trafton.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Schlicht, thank you for coming tonight and clearing up a lot of this stuff. I think that helped move this forward. I want to echo Commissioner Trzynski's concerns about the developer. We've asked him to be here. He's still not here. This is his development. If it means that much to him, you would think he would afford the right to be here unless there's some kind of family crisis. But I hope that's not the case. We have had that happen in the past, so I don't want that to interfere with this. But the neighbors were very vocal about it last time. It sounds like a lot of their fears have been alleviated, so I appreciate the efforts. I know the other thing, but I think the city does a really good job of trying to outline the requirement for developers to be here as part of, we understand that not all developers live in this area, but we, still want their presence to be known in the community, and we do support, obviously, the development. So appreciate your efforts and trying to be the messenger and the intermediator. So I will go ahead and put my support behind this project to move it forward, since the neighbors seem to be in alignment with the engineering firm in the development. So that's where I'm at right now, unless you guys sway me other ways. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Trafton. Commissioner Arth.
I would just echo what Commissioner Tuzinski and Commissioner Trafton have said. Thanks, Matt, for being here and for actively working with the neighbors.
Commissioner Lovelace. Commissioner Frazier.
Excuse me, I'd like to just go on record and say I agree with my fellow commissioners that this is opportunity number 3 for the developer to be here. And I appreciate that, you have been and served as an intermediary, but if the neighbors can make it, then why can't the developer? It's that simple. So it seems like most, if not all of their concerns have been addressed and you've alleviated some of that. So I will support it. But again, I just want it on record that, in the future.
Thank you. Anything else? look for Mr. Tuzinski for a motion on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to recommend approval of application number PL 2024-217, rezoning from R1 to RP1 and RP3 in preliminary development plan, the Townhomes of Chapel Ridge, 4060 Northeast Ralph Powell Road, Engineering Solutions, LLC, applicant.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Can I get a vote on this application, please?
Sherry Frazier,
Yes.
Jake Lovelace,
Yes.
Dana Arth,
Yes.
Donnie Funk,
Yes.
Terry Trafton,
Yes.
Chip Tazinski,
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Thank you. This application has been recommended for approval. We will move on to our last and final public hearing. We will open up application PL 2024-025, rezoning from RP3 and CP2 to RP4 and PMIX. Preliminary Development Plan, Conceptual Development Plan, Ovation, 325 Southeast M150 Highway, Engineering Solutions applicant. Anyone wishing to provide testimony or speak on behalf of this application, please stand and be sworn in at this time.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Thank you.
Ready?
Sir,
All right.
take it away, Matt.
Matt Slish, Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. I do have the developer with me this time, so Brian can answer any questions you need on that side. So this is another one that over the past 10 months, something like that, we've been kind of working towards trying to figure out what's the right fit for this 80 acres. It's an 80-acre piece of ground that kind of sits there on the southeast side of town that is in the development area that's continuing to kind of get looked at. A number of projects that we have keep getting talked about down there, and we keep kind of waiting for the one that's going to start this ball rolling. And so this piece of property specifically, we'll start here, specifically is kind of already zoned, it's already sitting on a highway, utilities are already there, but just like any development things, it has some things to work with. So as we go into the developer ward development, and Brian can answer any other questions, it's a multi-generational family development. 50-plus years of development, commercial, industrial, residential, for sale, for rent. So the portfolio is big. And so there'll be a lot of things that they do in a lot of different areas and pieces of it. Areas and things that you know that I've been in front of lately with you is the Lakewood Business Park. So out by the airport on the east side, the 80,000 square foot industrial building. Town Center Logistics sitting just to the north side of Colburn Road, kind of out there on the south end of there, just getting opened up, just starting to get operational. I-470 Business Park, a number of buildings inside that facility. So they're a known entity inside the facility or inside the city building good quality products. I've listed a few products here that are just on their website that are for sale, single family products that are kind of throughout the community. And then as we start to look in, they're noted to be the largest home builder by permit 2022, the second in 2023. Here's just a list of a piece of the last 50 years of what they've done. This is the more recent stuff, so you start to see the size of the projects from 25 to 300 units. Owner-occupied, rentals, for sale, some they build, some they don't. They have a mixture of uses that they've already done, accomplished over the years, getting to this point. So when they came and started talking to us about this site, the area is specifically directly to the east of Summit Creek. So that's something that I was in front of most of you for, 3 years ago, something like that. The multifamily development that is still patiently waiting to get going and head down that path. Up in that northern area, then you have the intersection that has more pieces of commercial development and residential apartments and mixed use than I can possibly list. But obviously the new Whataburger that just opened up, the big Walmart down there, Lamar's, you can't forget saying. The Quick Trips, the Firestones, the Sonics, there's a number of things right there at that intersection that have gone right around that area where the ramps are. Development has occurred to the west where we have the middle school, we have the elementary school, continued into residential growth. And then as we start to the east down 150 Highway, you start heading into Greenwood. So down Greenwood has started doing some development out there. So they've got their new Dollar General, and they built a new building facility over there that has that sugar shop, the Elk Canyon exteriors, the Impact Nutrition. There's a little wedding venue that sits on the southwest corner of Doc Henry and 150 Highway. Down Doc Henry a little further, Z Sports, indoor-outdoor soccer facility. So it's an area that has been primed for development. Down 150 Highway, Greenwood has plenty of signs up trying to continue the growth and the development along that 150 corridor. And so as we started to look at the site, the entire 80 acres sits in here, R1 zoned on the south 40 acres. There's a little sliver in here, I'll show you in a minute, let's just do that. The little sliver in here in the middle that's R3, so that is a multifamily townhome up to 10 units per acre. And then the northerly 30 acres is CP2, so your highest, most intense commercial use. As we started looking at this development and trying to figure out what to do, and the neighbors can attest, we've had 3 neighborhood meetings and thrown all sorts of site plans at them as we've talked through them. Similar to the last project, the first one we went into, we found out that it was probably not the right direction, and we've kind of worked our way backwards to try to figure out what made sense. As we started looking into it, and you'll start to see in here, you know, the R1 has a max density of 4 units an acre. Essentially, we're going to stay under that. We're asking for nothing outside of the normal box. We're going to build standard single-family lots. That's going to all comply with an R1. So technically, that doesn't need to be part of this development. The R3 in the middle then has an allowed density of 10 units an acre. We'll talk about where we get to in a little bit on that side of it. And then the northerly side, the 30 acres of commercial area, on that portion of the site, with an allowance of your code, allows some 700,000 square feet of commercial area in there. Obviously, not something that made sense. So as we started looking through, we started trying to see what's in the area. So Summit Creek, we already know what's in there with the mixed use. We know we're single family to the south, single family primarily, large estate lots to the east, with the one exception of the wedding venue place on the corner. And then Kobe Creek, that some of you probably saw just this spring and summer, that just got approved to go to PMIX to make some modifications to its site. So then we started looking through, what does the code book say? So this is inside the 150 overlay district, which is something that has been out there for a number of years, which the intent of that thing was to try to create that 150 corridor into something that made sense globally in the development perspective. So all of the red shown on here is some type of commercial use that was intended. This kind of pink with the dots in it is what they call their mixed use portion. This is low density single family, and this was supposed to be a little bit more moderate, medium density single family. So as we started to look through these pieces and trying to figure out what do we do with the site, we then started looking to see, okay, this is what Kobe Creek just did. So Kobe Creek went back in and said, we're going to put 7.59 acres of commercial up front. It didn't identify it very well, but they did say that they think it's going to be a restaurant, a daycare, and an automobile repair or automobile shop. So it's pretty vague. It's kind of something that's there. I don't know what really goes on that site, and I don't think that they did either. It was more the intent they would know that getting some residential development out that way, I think, starts to spur the development. So their latest iteration put 65 duplexes kind of on the southwest side. It put 159 single-family 40-foot wide lots up on the north end, circling 12 quadplexes. So as we started looking at our mixture of uses on our side, we started to try to figure out what made sense. And by this point, we'd had a meeting with the neighbors. And one of the things we heard with these neighbors to the south and everybody who showed up is that R1 single family on the south end needs to stay. It needs to be there to have compatibility with what their use is and what they think this development should be. So at that point, we've worked over the iterations in these meetings to get to leaving this 40 acres of R1 just as it is. So we said that, I think that makes sense. Except for we're going to go ahead and meet code requirements. We're going to make them 70-foot wide minimum, 8,400 square foot minimums, meet all of the setbacks that are per code, and leave that site as it sits. One of the pieces that then becomes the I don't want to say controversy, but the discussion that we continue to have is, what do? We know that we believe, and we know, and I think they did too, that CP2 at 30 acres is way too heavy. The R3 at 10 acres probably doesn't support much, so we needed to find the right mixture on that side of it. So then as we started to look through, we said, okay, well, what did Kobe Creek do? At 7.59 acres, if we left somewhere in the neighborhood of 12-ish acres, which we're showing to you today as a PMIX conceptual. And the idea and purposes of doing that is we think that that development needs to have some mixture of commercial and residential with it, but we don't know what it is yet. And so that's why we're saying let's take that kind of out of the project and let whenever someone decides what makes sense for that site, come back in and do this same process of a preliminary development plan, discuss the procedures or whatever it is, we'll take it. But we're going to put something on it right now that gives us a traffic count so we can identify the impact of what our system's going to do or what our development's going to do on the overall system to 150 highway and all of the signals and all the other pieces. Kobe Creek is required to install a signal, but if we get there first, then we're going to install the signal. So somewhere or another, there'll be a new signal that'll be installed at this location. So by identifying some type of use in that PMIX up top, it gives us an opportunity to start putting some traffic data into the system to start to identify what's going to be. So then we went to look and see what did Kobe Creek do for an amenity. And an amenity, they set basically one amenity right in the middle of about 1.5 acres. When you see our site plan in a second, what we decided to do is build 3 independent amenities, one for each zone. So the R1 guys would get an amenity with a pool and a clubhouse, the townhome community would get one, and then whatever the PMIX community portion up top would get one as well. So again, getting to almost double the green space that was allowed on that side. So this is basically where we kind of landed. So as we landed, we've moved essentially completely flipping the CP2 to R3 acreages in comparisons to the opposite. So now our PMIX is about 12 acres, and our RP4 is about 30 acres. We're at 27.8 on the R4, and we're about 12.3 on the PMIX. The idea being is that we will put in here our townhome fourplexes through this entire piece at 208 units. That will create a density of 7.48. R4 allows 12, R3 allowed 10, so we're technically meeting the R3 density calculation, but what we didn't meet is our opinion was we needed more community green space versus making the lots larger. So that's what pushed us into an RP4 versus staying in an R3 zoning district. So again, in that RP4 area, it would allow you to build 333 units. We're proposing 208. In that conceptual area up top, again, we'll go through it. We kind of have some apartments in there at 200 units of apartments. We have some office space in there at about 10,000 square foot. But again, that's just a conceptual placeholder that at that point when someone determines what that needs to be or should be, they'll bring back that plan. All of that to say, if we combine our R1 and R4 units with the area, our overall density ended up at 4.72. All that to say is comparison to Summit Creek, it's at 4.3, Kobe Creek at a 4.02. So we feel like we've developed some type of a plan that generally stays in character with what the other 2 developments that have kind of done in the near proximity to the site. So again, if we look at the northern half of the site, you'll start to see the pool amenity that would be the townhome pool amenity. They have a playground area, they have a basketball or a pickleball court or something on that side. We have our 54 quad lots that are spread out kind of throughout, and then this is that conceptual area up top. So again, on that conceptual area, we've put some pieces in there because what that allows us to do is it allows us to design our stormwater system, it allows us to design our traffic system, and all of our utilities on that side of it. The intent right now is that this, whenever someone decides that what they should build or when it comes, which we believe is down the road once, everything to the north or some portions of the stuff to the north start to determine what they're going to do. Because as we talk about it, I'm sure everyone's heard rumors of what happens to the north directly of this site. Kobe Creek has 3 acres of commercial over here, or 3 lots. We don't know what's going to be. To the west, we have acreage available. There's just a lot of unknowns on the commercial side that we believe that this makes sense to do a conceptual layout at that point. So as we start to look into the side of it, this then brings in the R1 just so you can kind of see the overall project as it sets. This is our single-family pool amenity space, very similar pool amenity space in here, and then we're proposing that at some point in the future there'd be another amenity space up in here. You're starting to see the playgrounds or pickleball courts or whatever amenity that wants to come up that would be kind of the common use probably for all of them, whether or not we put another piece in here or how that works out, there'd be some side of it. And then what we also heard from some of the residents and the neighbors is we want some separation. So as you see on the single family side of it, what we did is we went on all of the areas where the R1 was, we created a green buffer between us in the east, us in the south. Now up to the north, we didn't put that same green buffer. We can put some type of an easement or some type of piece back in here, but our idea is that this area was already zoned R3 and CP2. So the residents to the east of that site were very familiar with the idea that there was going to be development of a much more intense nature than what the single family would be on that south side as we work through it. But again, if it becomes a reasonable or wants to be a request, there's an easy way to put back some green space on that backside or put some pieces on that backside without much of an effort. So as we start to look at a concept for the quads, this is what we're looking at: 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Rent rate expected to be somewhere between $1,500 and $2,100 per month for the townhomes. Those would all be rentals through the townhome area. All of the single family would be for sale product. This would be a conceptual area that we would have, like I say, up in the apartments, trying to come up with something that we think is in character with what's been down in the area. A mixture of uses between 1 and 3 bedrooms, 700 to 1,000 square foot, $1,200 to $2,400 a month we think would make sense. But again, this is conceptual. This is something that whenever somebody decides that that project needs to go, they'll bring forward another plan. This would be the ideas of what we believe will happen down there in the single family area. Again, that's a for sale product down there. Builders will be mixtures between the developer, Ward Development, and potentially selling some of the last other builders come in, but it's a mixture of reverses, splits, 2 stories, similar to what you're seeing through the areas. Typical price range is expected to be $350,000, $450,000. It really starts to range on whatever house the person starts to put on that side, but it's going to be a standard R1 single-family residential lot. So then as we started low and back to look to see what are the benefits to the overall community for this development that it provides. One, this is your thoroughfare master plan that the city provides us as a kind of a guidance and a network. You can start to see kind of a north-south connector that was requested, an east-west connector that was requested, and you can see in our plan that we created and completed the east-west connector. We've created a connection from Belmont Farms to the north. Our belief is that Doc Henry, as we'll talk about in a little bit, is obviously a very difficult road to get out on. This would allow an opportunity for all the residents to the south to come up through development and get to the signalized intersection if they chose to make that traffic pattern. So now this one is one of those ones that's an interesting one. The overall development of this 570 plus acres of watershed is in an area of the city where there's currently sewer problems. This site by Water Utilities was asked to see if we could provide a space to create an excess flow holding basin. The developer worked and we developed a site plan that would create an allowance of a site that will allow the city to come in and develop and build an excess flow holding basin that would then relieve the sewer problems for the entire 570 acres of future development in that area. So from a benefit to the city, this is huge. I mean, this is something that as when we were doing Summit Creek, we were talking about going down and trying to do a little bit of a pipe expansion here and waiting for the next guy to do another one. This solves the problem. So this starts us down the way of where we're now creating an opportunity for the overall development of that whole quadrant to improve. So then we start to talk about the signal. So there's a signal required at our northeast corner that, again, Kobe Creek is technically required to install. Don't know their timeline. Whoever gets there first gets to install it. So as we went through it, and our anticipation would be is that if it's installed, what we tried to provide was some conversations that we've had with the neighbors as far as what the delays would be. What's the difference of adding in a signal? Because if you've been down on 150 highway, there are some backups, there are some delays. But they're all considered within reason. They're all considered to be working functionally adequate. MoDOT has reviewed the plan, city traffic has reviewed the plan. But as we start to look, so this would be the signal on the west side of our site at the outer road, you can start to see some backup distances. So eastbound, so if you're traveling eastbound at that point, 104 feet in the morning, 451 feet in the evening. If we look in the new developed site with our project there, it gains 10 feet. And the PM going eastbound, it gains 130 feet. All that to say, the distance between these two signals is nearly 1,700 feet. So it's not a backup that's going to cause impacts to cause delays or impacts between the two signals. It's going to be simply that there's going to be traffic held up in between the two signal locations. So the system can get designed such that it'll still function at an adequate and acceptable level for MoDOT, for the city, to allow the development. So one of the big ones, as we talked about, is Dock Henry that sets up in here that, like I say, with our development and allowing an opportunity for these developed lots to have a secondary access to get to a signal, the delays you start to see existing, if you're sitting at Dock Henry now, is 27 seconds in the morning and 82 seconds in the evening. With the development after we're done, we expect that it's 28 seconds and 87 seconds. So a pretty negligible increase in change at that intersection. Landscaping plan, I know we always like to talk about it, and this is something new that we're going to try to see if we like it or not. When we do the development as these, there's so many trees and so many plants and so many things that go in. We have named none of them, but we're going to make a mixture of large tree, shade trees, evergreen trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. And then we've started putting notes on our plans that are going to start to identify the mixture of those uses, so we don't get consistently the same tree, the same shrub, the same bush, but we create some kind of a pattern or some other ideas out there that will get a good mixture of uses of landscaping throughout the entire development. But overall, you can see the site will be well landscaped on both all perimeter sides and all of the road corridors. So, as I said, we've had 3 neighborhood meetings. We've had great turnout at every one of them. I think that we've worked through some of the concerns. I think see some of them here tonight, so I'm sure they'll have their comments. There are still some, obviously, we won't have to or we can't solve. But generally, I mean, the discussions that always happen are the same ones. There's stormwater runoff. So we've met with the neighbors. We've talked about what the stormwater will be. There's a number of issues out there that we think we can improve or make better. We've actually gone down and met with Lake Winnebago and had some discussions on what we could do to talk about drainage into their lake, because ultimately about a half mile down this drains directly into their lake. We've had conversations on the traffic. We've had conversations on not having the access point going from Belmont Farms up to the north and eliminating that connectivity. This was the discussion on the landscaping, the separation that we were able to install and put to the pieces of it. A lot of the discussions, in my opinion, and they can obviously speak for themselves, is related to the stuff on the north, the apartments and the commercial. And so that's why, as we've kind of progressed through this process, we've decided that that should become a conceptual piece until we're further down the road and we can identify what that wants to be. So at the initial pieces of it, we were showing uses. We were showing ideas that should go in there, could go in there now, and asking for approvals on it. But as kind of their request and our decisions, that it doesn't make sense to try to fight that when we have no intention at this point to install it until we know better, that's kind of the conceptual piece of why that's come up. I think there's been discussions on the sizes of the homes as it relates from ours development to their development, and trying to explain the transition from their larger state lots. I mean, they're typically 12 and 14,000 square foot lots as it transitions to our houses, to townhomes, to 150 highway. We've discussed the rentals, we've discussed the sale products and who's do what. So overall, I think that's a general summary of kind of what we've been doing for the last 10 months, and I think where we've gotten to with this project. So we will stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Matt. Full show tonight, Hector.
Yeah, it's all me.
Claire did a good job. She ran out of here.
Hector Soto Jr., Senior Planner. I'd like to enter into the record Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 19.
1 through 19 noted and entered into the record.
So, in a nutshell, the application's before you. It's 2 parts. It's got rezoning and it's got a preliminary / conceptual development plan. And it is for these 40 acres here denoted in yellow and kind of more of a canary color. Just generally at the southeast quadrant of M150 and 291. So as has been talked about just before, the subject 40 acres has existing zoning. It's got RP3 here on the south 10 acres, the northern 30 acres CP2 zoning. We do have a mix at this quadrant, kind of not unusual for a highway intersection, particularly one that's still emerging and still quite doesn't know what it wants to be when it grows up, for lack of a better term. We have a mix of industrial zoning, commercial zoning, RP3 zoning, which is a planned residential mixed use, some single family. We still have a lot of historic agricultural zoning and the PMIX that was referred to earlier regarding Kobe Creek. So with this slide, what I want to do is kind of provide a bit of a background as to what and when the zoning out there kind of emerged. So at one point, this was all historically agricultural property. And the first property, or one of the first properties, I guess it was kind of in conjunction with one another. The area that you see here, CP2 here at the kind of the hard corner, southeast side, and these 80 acres, of which the northern 40 is the application before you. These were the first two properties in this southeast quadrant to be rezoned from agricultural. So back in 1973, commercial zoning was established here at this corner, and also as part of a separate application, there was a total of 80 acres back in 1973 that were zoned for residential use at the far south end, 40 acres with standard single-family zoning. There was R3 zoning, 10 acres of it, and then 30 acres of CP2 zoning. So all this occurred in 1973. It wasn't up until about 12 years later that as you move south, I guess to provide some comparison regarding the existing single-family residential that's been developed out there. So 12 years after this property had this zoning established, commercial and two forms of residential, the Saddlebrook area started developing and had that rezoning. So again, that was 12 years after the zoning on the subject property was already established. And then you start moving your way, kind of you can see that the Saddlebrook East area was done in 1993, and some of that came to also encompass the first phase of Belmont Farms. So there's essentially a creek that cuts this area on a diagonal. The west portion of it is Saddlebrook East, and then the east side of that would be what would eventually, back in around 2002, would later become developed as Belmont Farms. Saddlebrook Farm down in 1998, and then subsequent phases of the second, third, and fourth phase of Belmont Farms were rezoned from agricultural in 2002, 2005, and then also a second application in 2005. So all of this zoning happened at least 12 years after the existing property was had its commercial and residential zoning established. So here, a lot of the slides I still provide somewhat of an inset to show the parent 80 acres, but highlighting that the application that is before you here is outlined in red, which would be the 40 acres. So a lot of this information Matt had already mentioned, but with this request, again, we're requesting, or we are. I say we're not, city is not, but we are bringing before you the application that has RP3 zoning, which would be about the southern 10 acres. That is being requested to be rezoned to RP4, and then the PMIX here at the north end. The general nature of this development, again, is higher density than what you see further south, but is in line with what you typically see with as part of historic and good planning practices, where you start to transition from your higher traffic and higher intensity corridors like you have along 150. You start basically going, in this case, from north to south. You would traditionally see your highest intensive uses adjacent to it, kind of feathering it down to something more like what I'll call multifamily, 1 to 4 type unit, attached units. And then eventually you make your way down to more standard single family. And then further beyond that, you start going to that existing Belmont Farms, Saddlebrook developments. So one of the things that Matt had mentioned, or Mr. Schlisch had mentioned, is that the proposed zoning or the proposed density for some of these areas are very much consistent with and sit within the parameters of both the existing RP3 zoning, which is at 10 acres, and the proposed RP4 zoning, which is at 12. So this quadplex area, again, is significantly lower than what the maximum allowed is under the UDO. Also mentioned was the fact that there have been multiple, in this case, 3 neighborhood meetings, and some of the concerns or topics that were brought up had to do with just the characteristics of the development as a whole, single family, multifamily, sizes, price points, concerns about traffic, concerns about connectivity with the existing subdivisions to the south, stormwater concerns, and just the buffer. Area residents have submitted protest petitions on the application. And I'll bring up a map here a little bit later. So based on what we've received to date, we have received protest petitions from property owners that represent 7% of the property, of the net property within 185 feet of the boundaries of the application that is here before you. And that buffer area excludes public right-of-way. In order to trigger a valid protest at the city council level, so protest petitions don't have any impact on what the ultimate vote is at the planning commission level. But when you get to the city council level, if they would have crossed the 30% threshold, what that does is that requires a minimum 6 votes in the affirmative to approve an application versus a simple majority of 5 votes. So to date, they are at 7%, not at the 30% that's required to trigger that requirement for 6 votes. So again, these elevations you've seen, but generally speaking, the materials are consistent with what we've seen in the area. The 4plexes primarily having stone exteriors with cement siding, lap, board and batten. The conceptual apartments, similar materials plus the addition of stucco. So when staff has considered the application, we look at a few things. 2 of these maps you've already seen. One is how the use lines up with the Ignite future land use map, and then any other corridor plans that may be in place. So on the right, you do see that the M150 corridor plan does show the 40 acres that are here before you, as well as an additional, probably 120 additional acres here more off that hard southeast corner. Collectively, it's referring to it as a planned mixed area, in that it's a transition point between existing lower density single family residential and some more agricultural residential uses to the east. And then again, transitioning closer to the intersection where you would historically or traditionally see more higher intensity commercial, office, multifamily development. So in keeping with that mixed use designation, the approved plan does, and is reflected in the plan, does show that conceptual portion with a commercial lot on the north end, multifamily apartments, and the 4plexes. The Ignite comprehensive plan shows that area as R1, which is more technically limited to, or asks for, or calls for, or at least I won't say it's a mandate. It's more like it foresees future development being more of a lower density residential nature. Off to the side here, you do see some residential too. And that would be reflective of the fact that there was already the Summit Creek plan that was approved in 2020 for 4plex development. So here's that Summit Creek plan, just to provide a little bit of context to what that area is and how this development ties into other area development. So I tried to get the scale somewhat right to show generally where these 2 streets would connect, and show, again, where the Summit Creek property and the 4plex development to the west, to the southwest, where that sits relative to the intersection, and to also demonstrate how the previously approved development for higher density residential fits in. It's not out of character when compared to the plan that's before you here, for about 27 acres of similar quadplex development, and that conceptual northern 10 or 12 acres with apartments and commercial. So in yellow at the far south, these 40 acres, these are the R1 zoned 40 acres that have already been referred to. They, just to be clear, those fall outside of the boundary of this plan only because that zoning is already existing. It's already in place. It's been there for 51 years now. Since it's not a planned zoning district, future development of this property would just go through a platting process. There would be no public hearings involved. It would just be a matter of the developer proposing the street layout, any common area that would need to be dedicated, lot layouts, and any compliance with the UDO standards would basically, there'd be no discretion in staff or, well, there'd be no discretion in the planning commission or city council levels to whether or not that would be approved. The use is already, the zoning is in place and the uses are permitted by right. So that's why that area is excluded from the application in front of you today. So to somewhat, I provided this image here to kind of, and Matt did something similar, to kind of illustrate exactly what is occurring side by side between the existing zoning conditions and the proposed zoning. So he mentioned that essentially what's being done is that the acreage is basically being flipped. So from 10 acres of RP3, which would allow quadplexes currently on the south portion of the property, and about 30 acres of commercial, essentially this line is being drawn, pushed up further north. It's irregular shape, but it's being pushed further north. It's eating away at the commercial, and leaving the remnant piece as PMIX for some sort of future higher density residential and commercial development. And do want to make it clear that as part of this application, this line that has been there for 50 years, that does allow for quadplexes is not moving any further south, closer to the Belmont Farm and Saddlebrook Farm subdivisions. So with this plan, Matt had mentioned on some of the road situations out there. So there was a traffic impact study that was performed as part of this application, and there are certain road improvements that are being required if this plan is approved. The road improvements would be located just at the signalized intersection for the outer road, as well as the future lone connection point between this development and M150 highway. So at the outer road intersection, there would basically be, and it's denoted, it's shown here, that there would basically be about 400 feet of pavement extension just on the east side of the signalized intersection, and then there would be the requirement to interconnect the traffic signals from this location to this one. The road improvements that would be required with this development here at the main entrance would be the installation of a traffic signal, if not already by that point is installed by Kobe Creek Development, and there would be an eastbound right turn lane, a westbound left turn lane, and there would be 2 northbound exit lanes, with one of those being a left turn lane. So there are 4 conditions of approval associated with this application. The first one being, having to do with the rezoning exhibit that's shown there, going from RP3 and CP2 to RP4 and PMIX. Other conditions are fairly standard in that basically development has to be in compliance with the plans that are presented in front of you, as well as the building elevations. And then 4 being a condition of approval tying road improvements to those that are recommended in the staff report, in the TIA, which are also brought up in the traffic impact study. So with that, I'll yield any questions you may have.
Thank you, Hector. We'll go to the public for comments. If there, can you raise your hand of how many people have comments? Because typically by rule, we do 3 minutes. If you can make it short, I'll give you a little extra time since there's only 3 or 4 of you. So whoever wants to go first, come forward and give us your name and address for the record. And
Record, name's Justin Gardner, 4304 Southeast Secretariat Drive.
Hey, sorry, Justin?
Gardner, yep.
Yep, okay.
I got more questions and statements. So when we talk, I want to say thank you for working with the neighborhood and everybody. We appreciate that, and thank you all for taking our questions. You had mentioned at the last meeting that when he initially applied for this, the city or somebody asked him to rezone it, right? I was just curious of why they would rezone it to include commercial and a multifamily mix. So that was really confusing for me. Is anybody able to answer that, or is that out of line for this particular topic?
What I'm gonna do, Justin, is I'm gonna write down your questions, and through our discussion or our question and answers, we'll get those answered for you.
Perfect. And then also, kind of want to make a question for the neighborhood. On some of the notes from the last meeting, it said there was a desire to include commercial use along 150. I don't remember us talking about desiring to have that commercial. Does anybody else remember that? I saw it posted on a couple of ones that, like the neighborhood and people attended the meeting, that we advocated and said we wanted commercial property there. I don't think that was our intent. I don't remember hearing it, but I don't remember everything. Did anybody?
It was in the first meeting.
It was just in the first
You
meeting?
need, sorry, Justin, you have to communicate
sorry.
with us.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're in a public hearing, so.
So I don't remember that. Apparently it was for the first
Okay.
meeting. The second meeting, I don't remember talking about it. So I know my pause is that there's an unknown right now. They have it slated for apartments and stuff like that, but they don't know what's gonna go there. The unknown is what gives me a lot of pause. And then also, we talked about the traffic signals. There's 3 right in a row, so that's gonna cause a lot of traffic. It's just weird to me to have all that right there, and you're gonna have lines out the wazoo. Right there at 150, turning left, that traffic intersection is already kind of a mess from the residents out, and you're just gonna add in a lot more. So that gives me a lot of pause. Now, we've kind of talked about it, and I've tried to do my own research, but I think I kind of failed on that one. But it's marked on some of the maps that it is a flood zone, and I couldn't find exactly where the flood zone was at. So that gives me pause. We're building houses on a flood zone. That I'd kind of like to figure out some more, if you guys could help me out with that. Where exactly that flood zone is at, and will that impact future families and anybody else in there? So I think that was all that I had. Does that meet my 3 minutes?
Pretty
Tried to roll
close.
through it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Come on down. It's like The Price is Right. You're the next contestant, so.
For the record, Steve Mayer. I live at 305 Southeast Hackamore, which in the letters, it talks about 185 feet from the boundary line. Well, that 185 feet is right at my the curb in front of my house. So I don't know whether we had any rights in the protest or not. But again, you know, we've come a long way from the first meeting to now. A couple of the concerns, I guess, that we've always had is how many, you know, there's probably going to be over 4,000 people in that 80 acres, and the traffic there. You know, my question from the first, second, and third meetings, if we had to cut through that, going through to Belmont Farms down there, because that's, you know, we've been there almost 20 years, and it's never been opened. We see a lot of people probably coming that way, coming into Belmont Farms, and just going to create a lot of more traffic coming in that way than there ever has been in the past. I don't attempt to go to Dock Henry and go out that way. I go down through Saddlebrook and the outer road. But so, is there any way in the R1 for those to be? They say they're for sale, but how many of those then can be for rent? And are those truly going to be for sale and for sale only? I think at each one of our meetings, we've had concerns about rentals, you know, and what might happen to our property values. If people aren't taking care of the apartments and even the quadplexes, you know, are they going to get run down? Who takes care of them? And what's that going to do to our property values just across the line? Make the basis of my questions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Rehawk. I'm at 204 Southeast Hackamore.
You said, what was your last name?
Rehawk.
Rehawk. Okay.
Let's see here. The same concerns as some of the other people, you know, potential home values decreasing with the rental community behind us. This is the first I've heard that it was going to be for sale. We've been told that it was rental, then it's going to be, we don't know at the last meeting. And now it's said that the bottom 40 is going to be for sale. A lot of us are concerned about the road. I don't know which one it is, what road it is, what you're talking about, that cuts through to Belmont. That if you put 4,000 plus people there, they have easy access to the neighborhood. Where we live down south, a lot of us went down there to almost live away from the city in a way. When we first moved down there, we said that we're kind of moving outside the city comically, even though that Price Chopper's 2 blocks away or 3 blocks away. But it's just inconvenient to get anywhere because you have 15 minutes to get to 470 in 350 highway. So we are concerned about how much traffic will be on there. I live on a cul-de-sac, so, you know, generally if you're coming down there, you have a reason. Also with that, I'll just keep going down my list so I don't back up. In something that was put out, and I did tell them about it, there was a bush called burning bush. My wife is actually a master gardener. So she said the burning bush is actually an invasive species, and a lot of people try to say that if it's a dwarf, it won't, but it's been proven that it'll revert back. So we asked that that be removed and not be put in there because that could cause more damage to the area. Let's see. Housing size, we live in 3,600 square feet, and I know they're saying they're gonna be 1,800 square feet. I know this is a single family, not in the development, but that is a massive difference between our house. I know the house beside me is a little bit bigger, and it just went for $950,000, and they're talking about putting $350,000 to $450,000 houses behind us. So we have some concern there. Really big concern mine is that retention pond and the basin that he's saying that's going to bring in a bunch of, or I guess solve a lot of problems, but that will be in my backyard. I'll be able to look straight to the left and see it. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but it doesn't sound real friendly to me. You know, along with being a business owner in this town, I'm also a real estate agent, not as active as I once was, but I do know people don't like to look at those things, and I have no choice whether, you know, when you put that back there. Again, I don't know what that's gonna look like, but it just doesn't sound good. Currently, right now, I know they had a water map up there. The water that comes off, but I don't even know what the address to the left of me, you can kind of see that black line. That gets overflown. The amount of water that moves through there is pretty excessive at times. There was a picture, we actually noticed that on one of the pictures of the old map I think Hector put up, that there's actually looking like there's water. It actually goes right to our house, so this may solve that. But we both have water issues going through ourselves. I hit 3?
3.
Am I done?
Done.
All right.
Doesn't mean you won a prize, it just means it's all over.
Hi, I'm Steve Vento. I'm a new property owner. My property is 3850 Southeast Dock County Road. I actually live in Lakewood. We bought this for an investment to build a dream house, which is now going to be a nightmare house, in my opinion. I don't have access to going back to any of these little things you have, but my property is the one, if you can go back to one of those pictures, it has the big pond backing up to 4 quadplexes. And I don't think anybody in this room would enjoy having 16 families living in the width of your property right behind. And so I'm just thinking about the noise, the activity, the quality of people that will probably be living there, maybe not at the beginning, but we all know what these type of property units turn into. A good example is by Chapel Lakes in Lee Summit by Lakewood. There's a bunch of quadplexes there that you don't want to go there at night. You know, it's a used car lot in every single driveway. And so the amount of people that are going to be living there of just the 52 lots times 4 families, and we know I know for a fact there'll be multiple families living in some of these places. And nobody wants to do that. No one wants to live behind that. I spent $370 on this lot on May. I had no clue any of this stuff going on. My real estate said, yeah, there's going to be a single-family housing addition moving behind us. This none of this stuff was available to me at the time. And so my neighbor, Jason Blake, gave me some information maybe 3 months ago in August, and my first meeting I could attempt to go to was the 4th of November. I asked for other paperwork. I signed up for an email, gave him my address, have not yet received any of that stuff. So I'm speaking blindly here. I know he said at some point in time that he'd like to have, like the lower part has an easement, a little wider easement for some gray area between the property line. I'm requesting, if this property does continue to go on, that we at least put the easement on the multiple family quadplexes that are going to be backed up to my land. A fence of some sort, knowing what type of fence is going to be, knowing what type of barrier is going to be between them and me. And if this is a done deal, there's a great chance that there'll be a for sale sign on my property on Monday. And nobody wants to have their dreams shattered. And I've been in education for decades, high school, college, and all I do is make sure kids are successful in the classroom and to be successful as they grow up into the world. And all I want is for me to enjoy my dreams and not be forced into a situation like this endeavor. Thanks.
Hi, good evening. Karen Thompson, 316 Southeast Hackamore Drive. And I'm just going to echo what a lot of my neighbors have already said of some of the concerns that we have, primarily the road that goes into Belmont Farms or proposed to come into Belmont Farms. It's a very quiet neighborhood. People have lived there for 10 to 20 years, live there because it's very safe, very quiet, kids are playing. And having a throughway into that neighborhood, feet from our home is very concerning. And we have young kids that play on the street all the time. And so that's one issue. The second issue for us is, the disruption of our quality of life. Many of our neighbors, and ourselves included, have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on our homes. We've invested in backyards that are developed with pools and things like that. And now, even though there's going to be a barrier space, we're going to be potentially looking into someone's backyard. And that is a decrease of our property value. It's a decrease of our quality of life with years of construction ahead of us into the space directly behind our, our homes. And so we would love to have additional barrier space or a fencing or some additional way to keep the privacy that we thought we had with our homes in our backyard. Also, one of our other major concerns is that there's no collaboration with the schools. We all know that Lee Summit West is over full, right? We're full capacity, and you're looking at putting 2,000 to 4,000 people. Obviously, not all of them would go to school there, but that is a huge concern of the quality of schools that we have, that we all enjoy, that a reason we have good property values, and how is there a gap of collaboration with the schools. The other issue is Doc Henry. Everybody wants to ignore it, and everybody wants to pass the buck on it and say it's not my issue. The developer has looked at it and as well and said it's not our problem to solve, but it is a major issue with no light being on Doc Henry. And if you've ever tried to come down Doc Henry, actually driven on it with someone coming directly at you, it's a scary situation. So Doc Henry is also an issue. And then, again, tonight is the first time we've heard that it would be all for sale homes. Every time we've met, it has been absolutely, they cannot afford to have homes for sale. it would have to be for rent. So I'm glad to hear that, but that is new. And then the final thing I just want to point out is, someone brought it up at the last meeting, and I don't know if this is accurate, but they said that there was a Lee Summit requirement to have the same sized homes next to each other. You can't build a significantly smaller home next to the larger sized homes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you, Ms. Thompson, I'll give you a simple answer regarding the schools. Contact the school district. We don't have anything to do with the schools. Not to be a sarcastic answer, that's something you would have to talk to the school district. And I see no one here from the school district, so we can't give you an answer on the school size.
Okay. It feels a little like passing the buck, because what is the school going to do?
The school board and the city are two different entities.
Right.
So they're the ones that would have to give you the value of ratio of children.
We can circle back to that, because we've had that question a few times before relative to the times that the staff meets with school district regularly to discuss.
Right. And I could provide one additional comment in addition to what the chair just said. If there's going to be evidence or testimony regarding school district issues, the best approach would be for somebody to tell the school district to come to these hearings and testify on their own behalf on that issue. And you've talked about that before.
Yep. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jake. Anyone else in the public got anything? We will do our best to work through all your questions, along with probably a lot of questions the commission has. Commissioner Frazier, you get anything to add? Questions? Okay. Mr. Lovelace, you got some questions?
Yeah, I can start in. I guess first question for staff, Hector. Just kind of starting through my list here. I heard a number of references to eliminating the connection point to Belmont Farms. So from staff's perspective, is that something that's feasible, that would be acceptable to staff? Can you guys weigh in on that?
It would not be good planning practice to, it is not good planning practice to, when the possibility and the opportunity and feasibility is there to connect neighborhoods, extending the street network, that it not be done. So in this case, Sorrel, when Belmont Farms came through in the first plat, the first phase, it provided that street stub connection in order to provide the opportunity to continue that street network system through this larger area as the area developed.
And I don't know whether you guys have studied it, but I know in other instances that were, relatively similar to this, a lot of times staff has said that they actually believe that the majority of the traffic would not be coming southbound. It would actually be going northbound, where it would provide another point of access for those neighbors to actually get out of their community, as opposed to people driving into their community when there's not much of a need.
Sure. So yes, in this particular case, access to the highways to the north. So most traffic is going to be traveling north. And even if you aren't going to head ultimately south on 291, you still have to travel north to get to 150 to then go over to the highways. So, I mean, there would be little reason for traffic in this subdivision, unless of course you have family, friends, acquaintances, whatnot traveling south. But in terms of your typical vehicular trip to get services, take kids to school and whatnot, most of this traffic is going to go, by far the majority of it is going to go to the north. So if anything, one of the points that was brought up was, if anything, to alleviate some of the concerns or with traffic at Dock Henry, a lot of these Belmont Farm residents, I would assume, would travel north through Sorrel, through this subdivision, to be able to get to the signalized intersection at 150 and be able to make safe movements
Sure.
to and from.
Sure, that seems logical. Okay, one additional question for you. There were some questions and comments about buffers as far as what are the landscape buffers that are between the different product types and the existing neighbors? So with respect to specifically the large lots, I mean, I really just to the east and to the south are what I'm concerned with.
So to the east and to the south, what you would see would be medium impact buffers. So the ordinance does not call for fence in terms of just the basic landscaping requirement. But with this being a rezoning, or with this being a preliminary development plan application, the planning commission and/or city council does have the authority to place additional conditions if they feel that that would help mitigate any concerns or issues to help these abutting developments to kind of transition better or to coexist, you know, in a way that, in a way to mitigate some of those perceived or real impacts that one development has on another. So at a minimum, they're required to provide the landscaping, and it could be tacked on should you choose to provide fencing as well.
Okay, thank you. And then one more, Ms. Thompson asked about a city ordinance with respects to the size of one home next to an abutting home. So does any ordinance like that exist?
We have a city ordinance regarding what the minimum square footage for a single-family residence is, which is 720 square feet minimum, but there's no additional requirement that adjoining
Step-downs.
residences have to be within certain percentage or threshold from one another.
Thank you. All right, so I have a few questions for the developer. So with respects to the R1, the single-family product that we have down to the south, it referenced on your plan's future. Is that intended to happen with the initial phase of this development, or is that something as a future consideration?
No, it'll happen with the development, so the process and steps going that's just a preliminary plat. We just put future on it stating that it's a preliminary plat coming in the future on that side of it, but the development essentially will be two phases. East half in order to get the connection north to south done, and the west half, leaving the conceptual piece on the north alone, but that's it.
Yeah, you just had future on both the.
It was just because it wasn't part of this application. We were just trying to
Understood,
separate
just clarification
Yep.
purposes. So, and then there was some, it sounds like there's been a lot of back and forth regarding what this product type was going to be, whether it was going to be for rent or whether it was going to be for sale. So you guys have settled on that being what?
So yeah, so we've worked through this through all the meetings and having conversations of what was going to be. Originally, we started when we had duplexes on the south, quads in the middle, and apartments in the top. That would just be a for rent community. As we've heard concerns and comments, we've now illustrated and commented that we're going to make all the single family for sale, all of the quads will be for rent, and then the PMIX stuff will be what it is.
Okay. Regarding the quads that you guys have shown, are those all single car garage? Okay. Do you guys have estimates on how many people? I heard 4,000 people quoted a couple of times with respects to the community. Do you have
I heard
ideas
the same,
on?
and I don't know. I mean, I think if there's 320 total units in the single family and the quads, and then there's 200 in the apartments. If you counted all that as it sits, that's 520. That puts you at like 4 per. I don't think that's the standard, and maybe Hector has a number. I don't know what. I think standard expectation on a housing count is like 2 point something. I don't think it's that high. So I think, yeah. As I said, I think it's a high number to say 4,000. I think that's more than what we would expect in the community, especially looking at the traffic counts. I don't see that.
Traffic counts would be a really good indicator as far as what we expect, right? Okay. And is this all going to be owned by, specifically the for rent product, is that all going to be owned by the same entity, by one developer?
Ward will own, manage, and maintain that.
And so then is it reasonable to expect that they would maintain it to the same standard of care across the entire development that they own?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there was one of the, I forget, I think it was Mr. Rehawk maybe, but he referenced the retention basin. And I think that's on the R1 piece. And he talked about how that might be an eyesore. And so I wanted to get some description of what we expect that was going to look like.
Not have Jeff here tonight, but I'll give you water utilities expectation of what I've been told and what we've expected as well, because we had the same concerns of understanding what it would be. There are a number of them that already are located in the city, and I can get pictures or we can find locations if we want to show them, but essentially it is a fenced-in area with landscaping on the exterior, and it looks like a detention basin with grass on the bottom. During rain events, it takes the excess stormwater that goes into the sanitary sewer system and is controlled through a structure that diverts the stormwater essentially into that basin. There is sewage in there, but it's not like raw sewage coming out of the basin. There is some of that pieces. That's why it's fenced and controlled. But it's going to be a 2-acre site that'll be managed on the interior with a fence, exterior with landscaping that we've requested. And like I said, from when we spoke to water utilities originally, the conversation was it's something that as you walk through the city, there are a number of them already existence, and you wouldn't notice if you didn't know what it was.
So high degree of buffer on that one, our greatest buffer that we have on that particular.
So the
facility.
fence is a security fence versus like a high impact buffer is an
Understood.
opaque fence. I don't think that they require an opaque fence, but I think it's just chain link. But then it is evergreens and as much as we want to put up on that side of it. So yeah, we believe it'll be screened such that, obviously we put it by our amenity, we put it by our house, so we're going to live right in the same zone of having it near our stuff and don't have concerns of it.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the townhomes, or the fourplexes, so they're single-car garages, and I'm assuming the driveways, how many cars would the driveways be able to accommodate?
So everything in that development area would have, get back to that area so we can see it better. So they're set back 25 feet from the street. So the driveway would at least be able to accommodate one with one in the garage. And so each unit would be able to accommodate 2 cars on its own site.
Okay, and then there would be on-street parking.
Correct, and we haven't talked to the fire chief about that, but I would expect that we'd have one side that probably will not be allowed and one that would.
Okay, and
One side, yeah, one side.
just one side?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's no other parking for like any overflow. It's just either in front of the fourplexes and then on the driveways, correct?
Correct. On this plan, you'll have the amenity center that you could park in for overflow, but not any off-street parking like we've done in some other projects.
Okay, all right. And I think you answered I was going to ask about the basin, and that's already been answered, so I don't think I have anything else at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask, like on an R1, the comment came up about the square footage of the houses for down there. I heard Hector say 750 is the smallest house you can build, but what are you guys planning as far as homes there? I might have missed that or something. I
Yeah,
couldn't see it in the notes.
And it's one of those ones you didn't know exactly how much information to provide on that side of it in the discussion. Single family did the other side of it. You have a mixture of opportunities of uses on the reverses, the 2 stories, the splits. We also have done it such that in the R1 zoning, when we look at our layout, the southerly lots were 8,400 square foot, the minimum square foot lot. We have 10,000 square foot lots, 9,000 square foot lots. We've tried to accommodate some larger lots on that south end. Given the opportunity, if somebody did want to build a little bit bigger product on the south end, they could, and expecting they would continue to go to the north. Square footages, I'll maybe let Brian answer. Square footage, kind of a guesstimates on those single families.
Sure,
Need your name
we're
first.
expecting,
Name and address.
Brian Ron, 1000 Northwest High Point Drive, Lee Summit, Missouri. Thank you for looking at our project this evening. So the typical product of what we're looking at here is 1,800 square feet. It's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 or 3-bath, depending on the style of home. As Matt said, on the southern portion, we are expecting, typically you're going to get into a slightly larger home, and then as you progress north, which is common, you're going to get into the smaller homes. But, our typical house and, some of the splits, some of the ranches and things like that, you're all in the 1,800 square foot range. So that's what we're expecting. And, we think that's a very, very good product in the area. That's going to be a good transition. I know, looking at the product at Kobe Creek, they dropped down to the 40-foot lots on some of it, and they dropped down to some of the smaller homes. We've actually kept this strictly R1 with the full-size lots. We are expecting, to have a good transition. They are not as big as the homes to the south, and definitely different than the estate lots to the east, but we feel that they are appropriate for the area and will make an excellent transition. There's been discussion. I just want to get one thing out there. Throughout this entire process, we've tried to be very, very transparent with the neighbors. We've had multiple meetings. I'm not even sure how many phone calls. I've made sure everybody has my email and my cell phone number. So we've tried to discuss everything. And, one of the things that's come up this evening and multiple times in the past is the rental question. All right. So, will somebody buy some of these homes and turn them into a rental? I'm not sure. Are we looking at it as a rental product? The quads we are. I was asked at the last neighborhood meeting, and I've attended every neighborhood meeting. I've had discussions with each of the homeowners that have been up here this evening. The quads, they're like, well, would you transition those to a for sale product? Because there is attached single-family homes for sale. We are not expecting that. If I told them that wouldn't be, that would be just straight dishonest. We are expecting that to be a rental. The products to the south, we are expecting it to be single-family for sale, as Matt said. Most of what we do, and earlier in his presentation, he listed just some of the neighborhoods that we've been doing for the last few years, almost 2,000 homes, less than 20% of them have been, single-family for rent. So I cannot crystal ball what the market's going to be, tomorrow, unfortunately. But I can tell you what our intention is. And on these homes, just like Kobe Creek, we feel that there's an opportunity to have a mixture of homes from, a good transition to the south with the larger home to some more attainable homes once you get to the north. There is a real need to have some of the smaller homes. Would it be appropriate to have a 1,500 square foot home on the north portion of the site? I believe it would. It would be a good transition and be more attainable. Now 700 square feet, the 40-foot lots, well, Kobe Creek's not doing 700 square feet, but they are doing the smaller lots. We've decided to keep this strictly, standard, straight R1, and we think that's an excellent product for the neighborhood here.
So on those houses, like what are you selling them for in other markets right now? Because it looks like you have
Similar homes, again, it does vary, as you said, by market. They're in the upper threes, in some of the markets, lower fours. And, here, this is a very, unfortunately, expensive development. When we first started talking with the neighbors, we had a lot more multifamily. We didn't have the single family at all. And they asked some of these things, and one of the first things I said is, I want to come up with a product that works, that you're happy with, but that I can actually build, that financially it works. So, we've worked through the 3 different neighborhood meetings. We've come to we added the single family to it. So, we are expecting that, these homes are going to be a little bit more than some other neighborhoods just because it's an expensive development. If we had more multifamily in it, that would help bring the cost down per lot. But we are comfortable that we have a good product here. And so, we're going to be a little bit higher. We're going to be in the 4s, whereas we might be upper 3s in some other markets.
So on those quads, what size are those coming out to be?
They're 3-bedroom, 1,400 square feet is the typical one. So on those, you're looking at Class A finishes. They are a nice unit. I know that there's a lot of questions. There's mention of 2,000 to 4,000 people, in this community. We're not going to be anywhere near those numbers. As Matt mentioned, even if we did the intensive use on the north side somewhere down the road,
we're still looking at 500 dwelling units. So, you know, we would expect to be way below that.
Yeah, according to my calculations, even if you put 4 people in every single unit, you'd have 800 people in that section. I did have a follow-up question. The neighbor that brought up the issue around parking and used car lot, yeah, everyone has cars that they're using, and when you drive through, we see those quad neighborhoods around Lee Summit. The thing I always bring up, Matt, and I know you're probably tired of me bringing it up, was what's the remediation parking plan? Because we know that one single, you know, usually they're 2-car homes, so even if they're parking in the driveway, there's a car on the street usually, which means it's full of street cars all over. I mean, my neighborhood has street cars on the street, so I'm used to that. It's more of a urban feel. But I know in some of your neighborhoods, we've seen kind of like some pocket parking in the area to alleviate some of that. So I don't see any of that here.
Yep, and that is still kind of the plan, to look through and think about those ideas. So we still have where we would create pocket parking kind of in these locations. We try to find and adjust some lot lines to see where we get to. As we go through these preliminary plans, and like I say, this is multiple iterations in, we honestly just haven't got back to that point. So certainly we would agree with you and believe that some of that pocket parking like we've done on other ones is probably a good idea to add in that area, and would be in full support of doing that.
Would be in support of adding a condition that we add pocket parking.
Yeah, I think we'd have to figure out, I don't think we can put a number on it, but adding some for sure, I think we can absolutely do that and find a spot to do that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Chair, those are all my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Tuzinski.
I don't really have a lot of questions, but I do have one quick one. Is there the ability to ask the developer to put in their covenants and restrictions that they will restrict rentals for after so much time? I know we've had that discussion before, that after the first year, then there can be rental, but there can only be long-term rental. Is there anything like that that we can request?
No.
I think that's the developer's choice of how they do the HOA for the 2 different.
Yeah, and so I'll mention one other thing that's, I think, relevant to this discussion. All of the discussion regarding rental versus sale, sales price, house design, sales price of houses, all of that's not binding. All of that could change. This developer, it could be a different developer that develops the property, and all of those data points could change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Benbrook.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Matt, while you're up here, while you were developing the site plan on this, I'm kind of curious why the main connector to 150 doesn't go straight south and tie in with the main connector that runs east-west.
So an attempt to avoid a speedway, you know, so our thought was that we had an iteration that had a connection from Sorrel all the way to the top. And as we started to look at that, the opinion was going to be that was going to create just a raceway from anybody in the site going through it. So as we started to create the site, the east-west connector that came through Summit Creek that eventually continues to the east seemed like a good point to start to create some basically bisecting areas that we could create multiple points of avenues to get through. So just as one of the residents said in Belmont Farms, they work their way, let's see if we have a picture far enough that would show it. As you start to look, some of that Belmont Farm, there's a bridge crossing, and that they'll actually work their way through and around and down and then back up to get up to that side of it. So it's our opinion in that design of a subdivision layout that it makes more sense to create some of those avenues of turns, stops, points that the developer is going to have the opportunity to, or the driver is going to have the opportunity to get himself north, but he has to maintain a slow speed in a residential area, essentially. It's kind of the idea of it, to not to create a collector type roadway.
Gotcha. I guess I was looking at a collector there with, I guess, turnabouts to control that speed like you're talking about, to connect to the commercial area, plus the east-west, plus take it south. One of my main, I guess, reasons for bringing that up is eventually the AG to the east is going to get developed, right? Whether that's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, eventually it's going to creep that direction, and that would be kind of a combined collector. And currently, it would give a buffer between the AG lots that we see now, right? Putting that street in, putting buffers and green space, maybe that would help some of the concerns. Is that a discussion you had with the residents?
We haven't, because I think the other one that you do, if we start putting a road along that easterly side of our site, is now we start to remove all that existing vegetation. We start to really change the development dynamic from our standpoint, because now we have a lot of back-fronted lots to get to it, and the drive that's kind of out of the way. You know, so as we've kind of talked to the neighbors to the east and heard their commentary, the idea was leave the existing vegetation, add to it, and create kind of that buffer to kind of somewhat seclude them, because I agree with you, at some point in life, likely the agricultural area does develop. Obviously, everyone who lives there right now is of full opinion that they're gonna stay there, you know, pretty consistent on that side. But yes, I mean, as we've run through the iterations, I mean, you know, this easterly road kind of created its best avenue of having kind of a north-south connection without having too many turns of it. But again, yeah, it was our intent that we didn't want, you know, what this would be like a collector road with no access points on it, kind of going north to south, because it creates, like I say, just a different feel and environment on a 80-acre site to that side. Because if they do develop, this road will be the road that would create the positive connection for them to get to the outer road and back to Dock Henry on that side, so.
Well, I guess that's my other concern too, is Dock Henry. It's undersized, as you could tell from the aerial.
Yep.
And getting over to that and creating more traffic on Dock Henry is a concern of mine.
Right. So as we've studied, traffic studies provided it, and anybody will have on that side of it, the development itself generated and expects that 95% of our traffic will go west. Zero, I think I'd have to go back and look at the study, shows any of our traffic going to the south through that south side, because there's just nothing down here. You know, so as you come to the south, Dock Henry dead ends. As you come down to the outer road, it dead ends. You know, so in our expectation in the traffic study, there was none to very little traffic that would actually go to Dock Henry, because it is an issue. But as we start to talk about issues and developer responsibilities, the developer of Belmont in early 2000s developed without doing anything to Dock Henry. And so it created an opportunity when that development was going on to do something, they developed on that lane and a half wide road. So like I said, this developer, as we're going through the process, is responsible for doing some improvements on 150 highway, the traffic signal, the excess flow holding basin, the connection of those roads and the pieces that are in there. So as we work through our things, everybody's kind of talked about Dock Henry, and they're 100% right, that there's an issue over there. But it's one of those animals, as we start to look as a developer, where does your responsibility end to your site? You know, so we feel like, you know, we're providing an excess flow holding basin that opens up an entire 570-acre watershed to develop by giving up 2 acres of that site is a huge benefit for the overall community. The 150 roadway improvements in that signal, whilst we've heard the concern before on the traffic signal, has proven out in the traffic study, it will be an improvement to the community in that area to start to control some of those things. So, and then again, with the road network, it's the continuation of those developments of these extensions that'll get there. And ultimately now it's gonna fall on the agricultural pieces on the east side. When they do develop, they're gonna be the ones responsible for developing or doing something with Dock Henry, because they're gonna be accessing it and will be, you know, very happy to utilize this east-west connector that'll get them back to that side of it to have a secondary access to that site, so.
So the connector that is currently designed, as it ties into 150, has that intersection been designed? I know you said it kind of depends on which development gets there first.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, so we know the signal needs to be installed. We know all the lane improvements that need to get done. We've shown them on our plan, and it's just the same way. If they get there first, they do their piece. If we get there first, we do our piece. But essentially, yeah, it's designed in the sense that we both know what has to happen.
And that's a 2-lane, one going left, one going right?
Correct. Out of our site, we'll have a through lane, a left lane, and a right lane on that side of it. With
So you'll
one
have 3 lanes exiting this site?
3 exits, 1 coming in, yeah.
Is there a way to consider that middle lane being a through or left to help with traffic coming out? Because if you have 520 units, and obviously not all are going to go through there, let's say you have 200 units, whatever, 2 turn lanes might be beneficial, because I think you're right, the majority is going to go north and then west and hit the highway and divide. And if you're already having that middle lane, I don't know how much more difficult, because I think, if I'm correct, 150 in that area is only 2 lanes, correct?
Yeah, so there's your answer, is that The installation of the second northbound left on our side is not the problem. It's the 1,700 feet that goes back to Sonic to widen that road. And currently, MoDOT has no intention, as we've talked through with them, of wanting 150 highway any wider than 2 lanes past Sonic. The idea being is that as you continue through Greenwood, there's no intention to continue 4 lanes as you go through Greenwood. And so their termination point at this point is they're asking for us, if you've been down there and seen it, it's just kind of a weird dead end on that southeastbound lane. They're asking for us to kind of finish it, and so we've agreed to do that. But there's no intent on MoDOT to do anything to the east on 150.
And it sounds like you've had those discussions with them.
We have, yes. Our
Okay.
traffic engineers met with MoDOT and had conversations, and we're basically to the final points of just tidying up a few spots that they're done.
The RP3, the quadplexes, are those going to be maintenance provided?
There'll be
Okay,
full maintenance provided. Again, Ward Development will build, manage, and maintain.
okay. So we're talking about they're going to do all the landscaping, mowing, front yards and backyards?
Yes.
Okay, maintaining any kind of buffer areas, fences that might go in?
All exterior and common elements, yep.
That's all I had. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think we've got a few. Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
I want to make sure that I understand. So on the quads and, or the fourplexes, they all have single car garage, and I think I understood you say that it was 25 feet?
So there's 25 feet to the property line plus the 11 feet to the right-of-way. So the house itself will have 36 feet of driveway,
Thanks.
but I'm counting it from the sidewalk back.
Okay, okay. And at some point, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, I want to talk about the school district, or
Probably-
clarify the school district.
Probably
And I don't know who's,
jump into discussion.
oh, okay.
Go ahead. Sherry, I'll get you when we get into discussion and talk about the school
Okay,
district.
thank you.
Okay, a couple more. I think actually let's see, I've got, actually, these are all for staff. Hector, please. There was just a couple other comments from neighbors that we hadn't otherwise addressed, but there was a question about the multifamily rezoning. As far as, I believe what they were referencing was the apartment units. So, and I think the question was, why are we doing a rezoning with those if there's no intended construction timeframe?
So as part of this plan, much like we do with most development, if the proposed application calls for the development of a portion of a larger area, we ask that prospective land uses be shown to demonstrate that they're going to work together well, and interconnectivity of, street network, utility network.
I think Matt referenced traffic counts earlier on and things like that, right?
So the use that was brought forth to staff reflected apartment-type uses with the possibility of some commercial. Really, at the density that they were looking at for apartments, the only way in order to allow for that mix of uses would be under a PMIX zoning. Had they been going all commercial use as a potential use, then the existing CP2 zoning could just remain. But since they were looking at a mix, and again, they weren't quite sure what it was, the staff's recommendation was the PMIX because it allowed for that flexibility of different uses. Understanding that even if the property is to be rezoned to PMIX, the development of the actual property will still require a separate application to come through the public hearing process in front of the Planning Commission, City Council, because that is just concept only. So there is no entitlement if this application is approved, there's no entitlement to the developer to develop in that manner. So staff's recommendation to the developer was, if these are the uses, the mix of uses that you're considering, PMIX is the zoning that would allow for that prospective mix.
Where they wouldn't have to rezone it the next time, they would just have to get a PDP approval.
Correct.
Okay. And then there was a comment about there not being a desire from the neighbors for commercial, but just to be clear about that, the existing zoning is CP2, right? It is commercial.
That is correct.
Okay. And then there was a reference to 3 new traffic signals. Is that accurate, just to, on the overall plans? I know there were some dots. Was it 3 traffic signals?
There'll be 1 new traffic signal, one at the entrance, and there'll be some synchronization associated with the existing signal at the outer road.
Okay.
And I think the comment was more related, because we've heard it before, is that there's too many traffic signals on that row. So by putting in a new signal, that creates the third one in that kind of system. So
Understood.
That was that point.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And then the last question, Hector, is any of this property in a flood zone where they would run the risk of being flooded out on the new product?
There is 100-year floodplain that is in the vicinity of the far southwest corner. Yeah, mine's not coming up, so. But the proposed lots would lie outside of that boundary, so, yeah, I think that one showed.
Might be the easiest to see. So we've kind of hatched it over here. So this little hatched line that's kind of in here is the stream buffer. The floodplain lies completely in this channel, all the way over here on Summit Creek. So on the Summit Creek plan, we had floodplain on both sides, southwest, southeast, but
The
this side has
structures
nothing.
would fall outside of any buffers.
This side has no floodplain on it at all.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, Chair.
Thank you.
There we go. So if I could add just a little bit of color, Shen McGuire, Planning Manager. If it were to be rezoned PMIC, that actually locks in a little bit more control for us, where currently the CP2 has a list of uses allowed by right in that zone, and any of those uses could go in there with the current zoning. With the PMIC zoning, there's no prescribed uses in that zone, so any use that would come forward would have to come forward to you and the governing body for approval. So there's a little bit more control with that PMIX.
Thank you, Shannon.
This one's for Matt again. When you said that you would be open to considering some pocket parking, have you even, I know you don't really, you haven't thought about it completely what you wanted to do, but if you were to just share tonight what you might do, I'm just trying to get an idea of how many you would include with that.
And I think one of the conditions we had done on a previous application like this is that the condition that was put in was where appropriate or where available on that side of it, because what we'd be looking at is areas like in these backyards, in between these kind of units where we could find them. But the number becomes problematic because we want to try to maneuver them around the site so that there's adequate spacing so that they're able to use them in multiple pieces of it. So I think our condition, if you choose to add it, we'd appreciate it being something more to the idea of where appropriate or as necessary or whatever we can do. It leaves us flexibility to find that number and find what that piece is, because yes, I would agree it's fine that we can find those like we've done at Chapel Ridge on your previous one of the townhomes. I think they work great, and we can find some spots.
Okay, and so if would the applicant be open to changing the number of units to provide for that parking? That's another question I have on that.
I think the number of units is probably established where we need to be in that quad section. So again, as we've kind of worked our way through this from a development perspective, we kind of play games with how many units we kind of need to fit in these boxes, and then we try to figure out how many spaces it kind of creates that area. Because if we were going to do something different where we were going to try to adjust the units, we would likely have to go in and try to adjust some of the PMIX area to regain the RP4. Because like I said, as we've looked through this, and Brian's commented on the side of it, just the cost of development and how it goes, and even like in Kobe Creek, you guys heard discussions on attainability and trying to figure out how to keep these things in an affordable range. This 54 units is what makes that pro forma fit, and the same as the 112 units in the single family. They all kind of play with each other to make sure that they can effectively pay for that side of it. So we will find some space. and like I said, I can tell you for sure that, the easy ones would be on these kind of south ends, and then we'd start to look up near the playgrounds and look up by the kind of northerly area somewhere we can find some spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can add one comment with, if you do choose to add the pocket parking requirement, we will also need a modification to the parking standards to allow the parking to back out onto a public street. So that will need to be a part of the motion if you do choose to go that route.
Continue to work through, I think the team up here has caught a lot of the questions. I'll jump back and make sure we cover those questions. Matt, on one of your drawings, in the preliminary plans, C100, you have a trash enclosure shown there?
Mm-hmm.
Dang, that thing's ugly.
You went pretty.
I mean, I guess I'm questioning, is the trash enclosure for the
PMIX up in the northerly area, whatever. We needed a trash enclosure space holder for what could happen so that
Okay.
we're understanding. So,
There's gonna be trash picked up at the fourplexes.
so the quads will all have individual, and so will the single-family
I'm
individual
just giving you a
pickup
hard
set.
time, but I
Yes.
was just like, there's this odd trash enclosure
Yes.
right out here on the drawing.
Yes, that would have been for the quad area, or the PMIX area up on the north end.
Shannon, I'm gonna dive back over and make sure I got everybody from the public covered, but Mr. Gardner had mentioned about the commercial use, and I know Commissioner Levelis brought it up for everybody's understanding. If we move forward and go ahead and do the rezoning to PMIX, it would positively make sure something would have to come back to us of what was going to be developed on that piece of land.
Correct.
An understanding that it is currently zoned commercial now, so commercial could go on there no matter what. In order to maybe add multifamily or do something different, we would have to go to PMIX.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Hector, Shannon, you guys can help out. There was a question about the protest petition distance. I think one of Mr. Mayor, Steve Mayor, asked that it stopped at his curb. Do you know where we measure to? He didn't.
This is a map I did of the boundary of the particular project. The boundary is highlighted in red here with this opaque yellow being that 185-foot boundary. The pins that are dropped are all the protest applications that have been submitted to the city. Blue pins represent applications that fall outside that boundary, with the red pins are the property owners that are within, that do have property within that boundary. So, and this green one is, when I checked the records, the person that submitted that application does not currently own the property, so it's not a valid application. So, as you can see here, the boundary is up here, and most of those that were down here. So.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure we got their question answered. I know we talked about the for sale, for rent, the HOA piece would be something that would go through the developer and not the city. I don't know if anybody wants to tackle the property value question. I don't know, David, I think we've had this discussion in numerous applications that I don't know if there's an actual evaluation out there that says building this by this is gonna change your property value or anything of that nature. I know we don't have any study like that.
No, I don't think we have anything that's sort of standard, off the shelf type of data that we could look at. I know that data can be produced by experts in certain circumstances. I've seen or read about, zoning hearings, probably, I can't recall any in Lee Summit where this happened, but zoning hearings in other cities where somebody opposed might actually bring data saying, okay, my house is worth X, but if this happens next door, it's going to be worth Y. You need to take that into account. We certainly don't have any evidence like that. We just have, we have statements that property values will decrease, but there's been no quantification of that. And my point of mentioning all that is you can take that into account however you see fit in your deliberations.
Okay, thank you. I guess the final one, Matt, if you want to talk about the buffer, I know there's a lot of, I looked at this and I looked at the Google Maps aerial, and it shows there's a pretty good significant amount of screening that is currently there. I don't know how much of that vegetation you're going to take out. I think Mr. Vento was talking about his property and screening and a fence and.
Yeah, so the intent is everything on the tree line to the east, west, south, anywhere we have existing vegetation, we would want to leave because it'll create a buffer not only for us to them to us. It creates a nice spatial piece, not just nuking the earth. Fences in those situations get difficult because obviously where do you build the fence? If you build the fence on the property line, you got to remove the trees. If you build it off the fence, now I got some weird trees in a space between a fence. So we would suggest that a fence is a bad idea in that location. But yes, we certainly intend to leave all of the existing vegetation that is anywhere possible. I mean, the only thing would be a utility or something that would cause it to have to get through there, but otherwise the intent would be to leave everything on that side. And then additionally, you see the landscaping that we're adding to the easterly side, going down through that way.
Okay. Commissioner Lovelace. Just a follow-up to your question. Go ahead.
Have you guys considered doing a reduction in, I mean, we've heard some comments from the estate guys, right, about their properties up against quadplexes, and you guys reduced the intensity of the product that you had up next to Belmont Farms. Have you guys considered reducing the impact of the, quadplexes that you currently have up against the estate lots and try to have some sort of transition in between those estate lots, on that row right there that you're looking at?
So what's difficult to see on these is what we actually did. So down in the single family area where we have the green space that's back behind, that's separate from the single family lot, the purpose of doing that is as we sell a single family lot, I lose control of what they'd be able to do on that property line. By maintaining the tract back there, we can control it. Since we are going to own, maintain, and take care of all those quads on that side, we extended those property lines to the outside, and these lots on this easterly side are actually deeper and larger than any of the other quads throughout the development, kind of in that area. So that one question. Two, the other question being, and kind of an answer back to the resident who just bought the house on that side, of not being aware or knowing of what's going on back in there. It goes back to the answer of here, he lives here. He backs up to a CP2 zone property since 1973. Just to the south of that's an R3 zone property that's been there since 1973. So in some of that stuff, in that area where the intensity of use is there, I would contend that directly to the west of his property, CP2, our RP4 is actually a reduction in intensity on the backside of his house versus what could have been there under a CP2 zoning district that would have been approved by right. So we have, deepened the lot. We are going to maintain and leave the existing tree mass, but we don't feel that it's probably appropriate to do much else because, in our opinion, kind of as we've talked about and Commissioner Bensbrook said, is at some point the anticipation is probably to the east that continues to develop. I mean, actually, the person who owns the lot directly there to the east of our site has already called us asking if they can sell in and be part of it and whatever else. And again, on the corner, there's already a wedding venue that's being used. So I think that progression is going to continue. So I think that any reduction in intensity, in this one specific area, I think we've done our part to kind of create that space.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think we've got through. I'm kidding. So don't know, Hector, I know we had the challenge of deciduous trees and things like that. Do you know much about the burning bush?
We have heard the burning bush is no longer allowed, and we have removed it from all of our plans. So there will not be a burning bush on our site, because he is correct. It is an invasive species
Okay.
per the Department of Natural Resources. I think they could put it on their list. So yes, burning bushes are out, will not be involved.
Okay. Um, for Ms. Thompson, we will talk about the school district. We'll get to that discussion for you. I think we got everybody. Yes, sir.
So, just to refresh my memory, Hector, is Doc Henry in Lee Summit? Does Lee Summit control Doc Henry? Or is it shared with Greenwood?
It's split.
Split in the middle?
Yeah, it's split in the middle. So we have the west, they have the east.
So any improvements to Doc Henry, I mean, basically it's ag right now, so there's no reason to improve that road. And it dead ends, I understand. So, I mean, another reason why that road would never get improved. I think the resident was talking about just the congestion. Is there a light at Doc Henry right now in 150?
No, there's none.
There's not, so, but it looked like, oh, she was talking about lighting on that road, so anything like that would have to be petitioned and agreed to by both cities, and for any kind of improvements on that road, like lighting.
I guess if you're wanting to put on both sides, then yes, I mean, we have the ability, should we choose, to put some on the west side, but, yeah.
So, but right now, there's no plan, I mean, I haven't seen anything for improvements to Doc Henry.
No, there's nothing currently in the CIP for improvement for Doc Henry. Any improvements to Doc Henry at this point will be development driven.
Exactly, I mean, that's
Yes.
normally how you improve a road, but, so I just wanted to be clear about so we could do stuff to the west of Doc Henry as far as lighting goes, because I think the concern was just like there's no lighting. Would she just put that, I mean, is that just something citizens would petition to the city about? I mean, how does that work?
I don't know if Susan Berry can maybe better answer what process there might be to make those types of
Sue,
improvements.
I just wanted to get Sue up here.
Susan Berry, City Traffic Engineer. Usually we install lighting when we improve the roadway. There's very few instances where we add lighting to an unimproved roadway. Usually we have a leased light by Evergy at the intersections, and then at 500-foot spacing. That's kind of our residential standard. Doc Henry's kind of a weird one, because since it is split between two cities.
Well, and it's mostly ag or large estate lots and not a lot of.
It's kind of a rural, yeah, it's kind of a rural
very
road.
rural area.
Mhm.
Most people don't want a bunch of lights on the road. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Covered. Anything else from the commission while we're in public hearing? Anything? Guys, you're good? I will close the public hearing and open up for discussion. Commissioner Frazier, I'll let you have your discussion on.
That would help matters, wouldn't it? My challenge is, as we've had before, the school district. And if we are looking at, I don't know whose responsibility it was. We're talking two separate entities, the school district versus the city. But there needs to be, I think, some communication and some collaboration. Because with these family units, mean, two things. I'm concerned about the parking for one, and then with the multifamily units, if you average 2 students per unit, I mean, that could easily put well over 1,000. And that's just in this particular development. There are other developments. I know we're not speaking about those, but we all know and we've seen when this in the city that school districts, it's bursting at the seams. And my guess is that these residents would feed into West, the high school, Lee Summit West. I'm not sure which, and maybe Summit Lakes Elementary School, that sort of thing, or Summit Lakes and Trail Middle School. So I don't know to what extent they could do anything about it, but I think they need to be informed because this needs to go into the plan because we're going to get hit with it again. We were hit with it, changing the boundaries a couple of years or so ago. And it's going to come up very quickly. And my suspicion is it'll come up probably post development. So that's just my comment on that. I think a discussion needs to take place. The other piece or challenge that I have is a single car garage. And if you're talking 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, you most likely have at least 2 adults. And they, living in that particular area, you have to have a car, unless we're all on a work from home situation. But you've got to get 2 cars, and that's why I asked the question about the driveway. That's going to fill that up. And we know also that we have other developments in Lee Summit where the streets are packed on both sides. And to the fire comment, it looks like in this particular situation we only allow parking on one side. So it's very, to me, important that we find additional space parking there, because then you start talking about, I'm teenagers. I have one. No, I don't. He's not. Young drivers and having them park on the street. It's congested, and that in and of itself will drive the property value, I think, down for the houses in that particular situation. So to the extent that we can, address that, I think I would be definitely in favor of this, but especially the parking and the collaboration with the school. I know you can't do anything about, the numbers in the school, but definitely I think they need to come to the table now. Who initiates that conversation? I don't know, but I think they need to be involved.
If I can add a little bit of information to your comments there. We do collaborate with the schools, and we do provide the information to them and do invite them to participate in any hearings. And as you can see, they haven't made comment to us at this point application. In addressing to the potential generation of school-aged children in the development, they have provided us a multiplier, so we can estimate the children per unit. That multiplier is 0.6 per unit on a single-family home and 0.1 on multifamily. So if we were to take the higher end of that multiplier, the 0.6 for the quadplexes, that's about 125 students, and that's across the school system as a whole, not just any single school. K through 12.
In that particular area. And that also increases, the bus traffic as well. Traffic studies in the light and making a left-hand turn. That impacts that as well. So, but again, my concern is just the parking and the congestion that would be there. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Lovelace.
I agree on the parking. Even with the driveways, well, a lot of times what you see you have the garage and then you have 2 cars on the driveway. And so then the sidewalk is blocked. So someone's trying to take a walk, they have to walk around the car, and then it's just very, very congested. I find it makes the area look really crowded. I would actually say that judging by the area around this, you've got Lake Winnebago, you've got Raintree Lake. And I hear people in Lee Summit talk about their desire to be able to purchase some form of multifamily housing, like duplexes. We've got a lot of people who are retiring and they want maintenance provided housing. They don't want a house, a whole house to themselves anymore. And I think there's a demand for that product. I think that product for sale could perhaps be very lucrative for a developer, but I also think it fits more in with what we have around this area. I really can't get behind more fourplexes, to be quite honest with you. And it's not a comment about the quality of the product or anything like that. I really think it would be nice to have some product come to our community that fits what people are asking for. And so I know I'm not going to be able to vote for recommendation of approval of this, but I do appreciate you coming to us with your proposal.
Commissioner Trafton.
Thank you, Chair. Generally, the school district has kind of commented that they respond to development as it happens. We have a comprehensive plan for development. We expect 40,000 residents coming to this community in the next 20 years. That's in the plan. All of this is mapped out, and all of these documents are online. Anybody can get them. They're there right now, and available. And so when you talk to the superintendent, Dr. Buck, he says they look at how development's happening and respond to it as the residents move into this community and adjust accordingly. Right now they're talking about closing a school. So, that's generally why they don't weigh in it. I like the fact, thank you, because we did ask for an update on the multiplier, because we do get this conversation happening a lot. So it's nice to know we have the updated multiplier. So thank you for that, Shannon. I appreciate it. Because that does help us educate the public around what to potentially expect in these developments. I agree that we need all levels, and people are wanting to move into this community into 1,600 square foot homes, because there's not a lot of that product. And so I can understand why the developer wants to put it forward. I also understand, not in my backyard or not behind my 3,000 square foot home, even though there's going to be a buffer. I understand that, but we have neighborhoods now that have mixed level homes that work, and the value of the homes actually are appreciating. So, I get concerned about the parking, and I am supportive of a condition to add where, I appreciate Matt being willing to work on the parking, because we know when we drive through those neighborhoods that there may be 2 cars stacked in the parking in the driveway, but then there's also the streets are full of cars. So, and we have a concern around safety, and so. I don't know what that would look like to add that condition. We can definitely do it. I think the governing body would probably be supportive of that if we were to move this forward. I do have some trepidation just about the front end of the lot, and I do think moving it to PMIX would probably give the city a little more control, and honestly for the neighbors to remove the commercial district that's already sitting there. We have 2 developments around this development where they're doing similar products to this. And so I guess the question is there that much demand for the product in that part of town? I don't know. The question is, we see some of this in other parts of the town, so I don't know. Those are question marks for me, but, with help, I would be willing to add a condition if it's something we were wanting to do. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Tuzinski.
No additional comments, thanks.
Commissioner Benbrook.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I came in tonight with a lot of questions, and a lot of those were answered through presentation of staff and Mr. Schlitt, and I realize that a lot of the questions I had, they had also, and particularly working with the neighbors. It sounds like they've gone through a lot of process to get to where they're at. I appreciate the fact that they kept the R1 in its true form with the larger lots. I think that was a good decision and a good kind of give to create that separation between the existing neighbors and a little bit higher density use. I do agree with the additional street parking, and I don't know if it's something that maybe we push the quadplexes back, since those backyards are never used, and we get 2 cars on the driveway, and we extend the driveways a little bit to create a little bit more parking off the street. But that'll be up to those who look at it in a little bit more deeper design. I do have a little bit of a concern regarding the pond that is really close to 4 or 5 of those quadplexes. We know that property owners at time can have homeowner claims filed against them with children and different things of that nature being so close. So maybe a fenced area along that particular portion of the property line might be a good idea. All in all, I think a lot of work has gone into this, and I think this is probably one of the best solutions I've seen, even going through the iterations in my own head. So I will support this tonight, knowing that it's not perfect, and unfortunately, when you move into a neighborhood and you're used to the lush green yards being behind you, and the deer and the wildlife, and you want that forever, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. And as much as I regret that, it's just how development works, unfortunately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Lovell.
Real quick, I agree with a lot of what Randy just said, but and Randy and Terry, and but I think ultimately on this one, the couple issues that I do have for the developer that I'd like them to look into are defining the off-street parking. So I don't think having something in there that just says, hey, we'll work on that, works for me at this point in time. And then I would like to see 2-car garages that are worked into this product. I don't know where else we've done single-car garages that have been approved on this sort of product in Lee Summit recently. And even if we have, I don't think that it's probably best practice to be able to keep vehicles off the street and things like that. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with my fellow commissioners, and I appreciate all the discussion we've had on the school district, and appreciate the developer and the discussions with screening and those kind of things that we would want to work out, but I'm struggling with the amount of units that are put in this one spot. The parking is somewhat has me a little baffled that we could really pull this off, and this is just a lot of units in one spot. I understand, but we have a comprehensive plan. This body did a lot of work on the comprehensive plan. I think, Matt, I would propose the question, if versus setting up here, taking a vote. I'm not going to say I know how that vote's going to go. If you would want to continue this and take a look at some reiterations of parking and a few of the hot topic items, I don't know if staff would be in consideration of that as well. Or is this something that you guys would just like to see a vote and moved on to city council?
No, absolutely. We are 100% fine with table this. Let us go back and figure out what we can do with parking and figure out some of the solutions we have on that side of it. Like I said, this has been a journey for us to get to this point, and we want to continue to work to find the right solution. We think it's a good product, and so yeah, please just push us on to the next one, and we'll go work with staff and work with the developer, and we'll find a plan that meets some of those comments that you guys have come up with.
Chairman?
Yes.
I didn't say anything earlier, but now that we've kind of gone this way, I do want to say something. As the engineer looks at this site, I definitely believe the parking is an issue. I think it's a function of the density. I don't think we have enough of it there. But also, please look at those 4 units that back up to that pond and try to find a way to really screen that. I initially was thinking along the lines of Commissioner Benbrook about a fence, but I really don't want all that existing growth to be torn out. But there does need to be something that really keeps children and other people from wanting to go play in his pond, and that could be on the property owner too. But as a neighbor, I would hope you'd look into that. But I would agree, and I would vote yes for a continuation on this one.
Thank you. Staff, do we have a date we want to push this to? Matt, do you need a little time, or do
The
you want
next
to?
available date would be either January 9th or January 23rd.
January 9's good.
Before we jump into a vote, I want to thank all of the public that came. This is what this body's for. I know we can't make all of the right decisions for everybody, but hopefully we can get to the source and get the best product that's out there, something that's going to last a long time in our community. Thompson's still here. Ms. Thompson, I trumped on you a little bit about the school district, but if you didn't notice, it's a little thorn in my side that we could, I feel like this body could have a little bit more communication with the school district. I think Ms. Frazier might help us with that. Outside of that, thank you, Matt. Thank you, to the developer. Thank you guys for coming and working through all of these things, and hopefully we can fix a handful of these things before January 9th. And with that, I will look to Mr. Benbrook to lead us in a motion to continue this application.
Thank you, Chair. I move to recommend continuation of application PL 2024-025, rezoning from RP3 to CP2 and CP2 to RP4 and PMIX preliminary development plan and conceptual development plan, Ovation 325 Southeast Missouri 150 Highway Engineering Solutions LLC applicant to a date certain of January 9th, 2024.
2025.
Second. Oh, sorry, 2025. Wow.
Chair, one other item for the purpose of recording the motion. You started the motion with you recommend a continuance. The motion would just be you're continuing. You're not recommending anything. Yeah. And I'm saying that for the clerk recording that.
Okay.
There, yeah.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we get a vote to continue this application to January 9th, 2025?
Sherry Frazier,
Yes.
Jake Lovelace,
Yes.
Dana Arth,
Yes.
Donnie Funk,
Yes.
Terry Trafton,
Yes.
Chip Tazinski,
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
The application has been continued. Roundtable. Man, anybody feel like talking anymore?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just real quick, and this is really for staff. I don't know if this is the future of what we're gonna start seeing, is a lot more density, a lot more of these kind of developments coming through. I think I've seen quite a few more over the past few years than what we've had. But this may be something that we would want to go back to our standards and look at density and what we want this community to be. Because I really don't want to see this development do this, and then the development right next door do this, and the development across the street doing this, which it is, and then up and down. I mean, maybe this is just my opinion. I don't know what the rest of it is, but I know we've got a member on the city council now that used to be part of this, that used to really get upset about all the apartments. But this is something that I think we need to consider as this community, what we want. And I know you guys are doing a great job on what planning is done and what the world of planning is across lots of cities. But we need to try to figure out what we are and really come up with that plan and start implementing it. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks. I think when you have something like this, Commissioner Tazinski, and I think Matt, he's still here and he's going to listen to us pick on him. No. I mean, I think from the developer standpoint, when they're trying to make a development pencil, you have to have so many units to make that happen, you know, based on infrastructure costs, land costs, that kind of thing. And I think at some point I know we developed a comprehensive plan, and I know what we said we wanted to do, and I think it's getting a little bigger than what we can really satisfy, and there's a lot of this particular application, and we've seen several of them, of figuring how you park cars. I mean, I don't know if I trust, I had a family member that, she was a single mom, she lived in a Donovan, and I guarantee you, the school district's math is completely off on the number of children that live in that apartment complex, because I've went over to visit her before. I just don't know that you have teenagers and young people who get a roommate and they have 6 people in parking. It's a challenge. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for this developer to get the parking right. But I agree. I mean, I think we're getting a little deeper on the density than what we can handle for the roadway and the parking and the style of construction.
And and again, my opinion, not the opinion of the board here, but I look at other communities around the 2-state metro region, and I know where I want us to be, and I look at all what these other cities are doing, and, you know, I just don't see this. Maybe it is, maybe it's going on all over the place, and I'm just completely oblivious to it. But I just know where I want to see us be, and we just have a lot of this coming in. So, and I get it from a financial perspective. You got to make the numbers work, and this is how you do it, I guess. But you know, it's a balance. But it's just something that I feel like we need to figure out who we want to be.
Well, and I think when you talk to other people that live in the community, they talk about wanting something they can purchase, and maybe duplexes, like I said, or, and some of those, the price is not, they can afford it. It's not that's the detriment. And to have some kind of products like that people can look forward to going to, I think is something we need to think about, because like you said, other communities, especially in an area like this that people have already moved to get away from some of the density, and then we bring it back there, or bring it there. I think after a while, there becomes a place where people can't really go to get perhaps the properties they want. So I agree with you. Maybe looking at what we want to accomplish within our comprehensive plan, or maybe the comprehensive plan, maybe it's time to change it, or look at it again.
Just because we're talking about it, the staff's done a good job in the past of providing us with ratios relative to some of what we consider our peer groups around the metro. Last time, we were relatively low on the density count, but maybe it's a good time to revisit that. Shannon, if that's something you guys could provide to us at a future meeting date, just for everybody's reference.
Yeah, so we do have those numbers, and we can provide those to you.
Okay, that would be great. And then maybe as one other thing from staff would be just to show over the last, call it 3 years, some period of time, what the difference in permit counts has been between single-family and multifamily permits, just because I have some suspicions what that's going to look like over the last, call it 2-3 years for sure, but maybe over the last 5 is even a better indicator. And then just to bring that all to a head, this is still a supply and demand thing, and it's still market-driven, right? Developers that come in here, they don't just look at, a multifamily project and say, hey, that's what sounds good to me today. It's, that's what's most attractive. If there was significant demand for single-family homes in Lee Summit right now at whatever price point, whatever lot width, all those different segments that we're talking about, and we were out of those, then developers would be in here to be able to develop that product again, if the demand supported it. So I don't want to try to box this in so tightly that we're, not paying attention to what's happening on macroeconomically. So that's it. A few of those things might help this conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to tag on to that, so thanks for saying that. But don't we have an upcoming discussion around some of this? Is this in our December meeting?
It is not. The December meeting is more kind of a training meeting than it is a housing report, but I can get you that information. We just went to CDC with some housing numbers, so I can definitely forward that
Okay.
along to you as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, and I'm all for, a plan is something at a point in time we develop, and then over time it will get adjusted based on demand and market. So I know middle market housing is something that was identified as missing in Lee Summit. I also know that people want to get into Lee Summit with less than spending less than $380,000 to get in a house, because that's not, new entry-level housing. People can't afford that. So, anyway, thanks for that update for housing.
So Terry, for the training, maybe you can coordinate like a Secret Santa thing for all of us?
I'm gonna Secret Santa you.
Great.
I don't think so. Not it.
Again, we'll wrap up and adjourn if everybody has got everything. Thank you to the folks that came out. Your opinion matters. It means something. It gives us something to build off of. I'm glad you guys got to be a part of our Thursday night TV show. Our audience is huge. I mean, it is big. Shannon, anything from?
Yeah, I just, I pulled up the housing report that we just did, just to kind of add some additional information. Yeah, I'll just send it to you. There's 34 slides here, so I don't know if you want me to go through them all, but
Are we low on single-family housing?
we're high.
We're high.
Yeah, we're predominantly, mostly single family, and then we're the comp plan establishes ratios that we want to work towards, and we're actually high on the single family, low on the multifamily and mixed density. So
We're trending low on those.
Yep.
Good to know. Good? Yeah. We are adjourned.